Hello. I'm sorry, I'm late. I'm running late. I was running late. Hi. Can you guys see me and hear me okay? Is everything good? Are we good? Happy Saturday. I hope you guys are having a good weekend thus far. Welcome. We're back to Gabby Petito case today, and we need to talk. Yeah, I know, it's a lot. This case, yeah. Let me say hi. Hello, welcome. Thanks for being here. I saw Tipsy, Pantera, Mary D, Debbie. What up, guys? What up? Scott. Being Bio Girl. Hi, Judy. Hello, Judy. I'm glad to see you back, Being Bio Girl. That intro is dope. Thank you. I appreciate that. 𝗍𝗶𝗲, good to see you. And hello, King Kong. Hello. Patty. Hello, Patty. Good to see you, love. And I see Michelle. Hello. Hi. I'm glad you guys are here. We got good stuff. Okay, so Gabby Petito. We've been covering her case. The last live we had, yeah, it was a lot, right? It's a heavy case. It involves around domestic violence. And I have my opinions about the police department. And I was pretty frustrated with that. Hey, Kay, good to see you. And I was pretty frustrated about that. So I do want to apologize. Sometimes I can come off a little aggressive. Very much that. But I know I might not be everyone's cup of tea, and that is okay. But if you're down, I'm down. Anyways, we covered the body cam footage of that night in Utah when they get pulled over by authorities. And I know the Netflix documentary is out. I have not watched it. I'm planning on watching it maybe tonight or tomorrow, depending on if I have another live later. I know it's very controversial. I saw someone say, I think I missed it, but I think Pantera said I have questions, or somebody said I have questions, and I said, me too. Oh, was that you, Mary? Thank you, William By Girl. I know. It's hard to watch. Well, and I think that sometimes you get triggered, right? We've all kind of been in a situation, whether it's like a toxic relationship or a domestic violence relationship. It's very uncomfortable to talk about, but it's very much, I guess, horrifically normal. It's so common, right? And we cover a lot of true crime that revolves around domestic violence and such. So with that being said, we, RIP Gabby, this is a wild case. Today we're going to read Brian Laundrie's autopsy report. I'm going to just hit the main parts. It's pretty long. I'm going to skip a lot of what goes over about his health that I don't think is relevant to the case. So I'm just going to skip past that. At least we'll get the main conclusion of it all and some of the findings. And then I want to play another clip from the body cam footage. I do want to say, though, before I continue, that live got taken down by YouTube when I did that live on Gabby, because they were saying that something with the body cam footage, but it is back up. So I'm excited about that. I just had to clip out like a part or two, so not bad, but it is back up. I have it members only. I'll see. I might take it off. This one will stay open, though. I'm not going to members this only one. That one was only because I felt like I don't know. It's a little more personal. The cops failed her. Right. I agree. And okay, so we're going to watch a clip from that same body cam footage with the female officer. I don't know if that is in the documentary, so you guys can school me on that in the chat. But it's very interesting. It's a short clip. We're going to watch it. And then I really am excited I was excited about the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 autopsy or medical examiner report, but I also have there's a statement on investigative review. This was basically an investigation into the Moab Police Department when there was a complaint filed. I'm not sure if that had to do with the lawsuit the Petito family filed, but there was a formal complaint filed, and so they had to be investigated that night they had to investigate, basically look into what happened with the cops and the police involved in pulling them over, etc. And I have questions. I think there's a lot in here that, basically states that they did do their job, and then in other areas they failed. And so it very much goes in with what we've been, I think, saying all as a whole here in the chat with the Gabby Petito case. But we're going to start with the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 report. Like I said, I'll skip through some parts just for privacy things. I'm trying to get the date. October 20th, date of death, October 20th, 2001. Let me say hi to everyone. Thank you, Kay. Thank you for giving. I appreciate you. Hello, Didi. Good to see you. Thank you, Kay, for supporting and being so kind and gracious. I appreciate you and being a good mod here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And welcome, new members. Welcome to Mellyverse. You get access to Melly After Dark. And yeah, you're forewarned. Moving on. Welcome, new members. Yeah, good to see you. As long as chai tea. I do like chai tea. Hello, let me see who became members. Kelly, Carrie, Nicole 22, Being Bio Girl. Yay! Being Bio Girl. That's awesome. That's exciting. Okay, let's get started. So on October 20th, 2021 at 9:30 hours, I was contacted by Sergeant Fortuno from Northport Police Department in reference to apparent human skeletal remains. The remains were discovered in the Carlton Reserve north of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Creek. My apologies for whatever I don't pronounce correctly. Environmental Creek located at 6968 Reisterstown in Northport. Sergeant Fortuno advised that a massive search had been ongoing in the Carlton Reserve for several weeks by multiple agencies for a 23 white male, Brian Christopher Laundrie. On October 20th, 2021, search groups found a backpack and shoes that were identified as belonging to Brian Laundrie. The personal belongings were surrounded by apparent skeletal remains that were scattered on top of the dirt ground. I was informed that the evidence response team from the Federal Bureau of Investigations, along with the cadaver and electronic detection dogs, were responding to the scene to assist in locating additional human remains. Hey, Smog Dog, good to see you. I contacted Dr. Vega, Dr. Broussard, et cetera, and provided them with the above information. On that same day, I was contacted by Detective Keller from Northport Police, who advised that he was a lead investigator for their agency. That same day, Director Winterhalter contacted Forensic O'Donnell's Nancy Havens and requested records, basically just listing everyone who's doing the report. This is a medical examiner report, by the way. I haven't read through it, so bear with me. I read through a little bit of the other one, but on that same date, Chief Investigator Andres Cavanner and Loveridge and I arrived on the scene. We were transported to the location of the apparent human remains. Upon arrival, we went with 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, team leader of the FBI evidence response team, who walked us through the scene. Team leader Harvey informed us that the search area was previously under approximate 3 feet of water, which was indicated by the water line upon the surrounding trees. The search area was divided into the main scene and a secondary scene. Both scenes were marked with orange flags that indicated apparent human and/or animal remains, and red flags that indicated personal effects. I photographed the scene and as I observed with a Nikon digital camera. That same day, Dr. Vega arrived on scene and examined the remains. The scene was north of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Creek Environmental Park within the Carlton Reserve and west of the Big Slough Canal. The scene includes trees and overgrown vegetation that had total exposure to the outside elements. A winding walking and vehicular trail ran in a northeast direction up to and through the scene. This is like very detailed. I feel like I'm there. The skeletal remains and personal effects were in plain sight and scattered upon the dirt ground. The main scene contained human remains that included a right and left scapula and a right humerus, a left arm, a left and right femur, two tibias, two fibulas, two clavicles, two pelvis, one right ulna, one right radius, a sacrum, multiple ribs, multiple skull fragments, along with the maxilla and mandible, and approximately 25 vertebrae, cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. It was confirmed that the remains in their area to be human. The main scene also contained personal effects that included a pair of green shorts with a green belt, 2 slip-on shoes, a backpack with unknown contents, a white metal ring, and an unknown type of handgun. The secondary scene contained skeletal remains and a handwritten half note and a hat with the logo MOB Coffee Roasters. I was informed that a dry bag was located that contained a journal, along with a wooden box that contained a small notebook and a photographic picture of Brian Laundrie. I was advised there was additional photographic pictures, but the contents were undisclosed to me at this time. On that same day, all personnel cleared the scene. Let me touch base with you guys. Hey, 𝗟𝗲𝗃, good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. I know I have to watch it. Torta Pounder, you made it. Hello, Torta Pounder. Glad you're here. Thank you guys for being here. Okay, let's continue. Investigator Kavanagh transported skeletal remains that included cranial bones, maxilla with existing teeth, and mandible with existing teeth that were processed by the evidence response team. On October 21st, 2021, Director and Dr. Nancy from the Forensic Odontologist and Sarasota Medical Examiner facility to assist with basically the 𝐕𝐞 report. On that same day, I'm going to skip through some of this. I don't feel it's important we have to go through who these people are. Kind of just want to get to this part. We made contact with team leader of the FBI response team, who advised the main scene was divided into 3 zones, which were designated for sifting purposes in search for additional human remains. Zone 1 contained remains of the upper torso, upper extremities, and head. Zone 2 contained remains of lower vertebrae and sacrum. Zone 3 contained remains of the left arms and bones. That's brutal. That same day, a projectile was located near Zone 2 of the main scene by the evidence recovery team of the FBI by utilizing a metal detector. All additional human and animal remains, along with the personal effects, were collected and inventoried. Detective Keller and Bush arrived at the facility. Detective Keller reported that the descendant's sister informed the descendant was right-hand dominant. Detective Keller informed us that the descendant was last known alive on September 13th, 2021, when he left his residence to go hiking in the Carlton Reserve, but the descendant did not return home. On September 14th, 2021, the descendant's vehicle was located in the parking lot of the 𝗏𝐻𝐾 Creek Environmental Park. On September 17th, 2021, the descendant was reported to the Northport Police Department as a missing person. During this time period, it rained for several days, which caused portions of the Carlton Reserve to be flooded. On October 7th, 2021, the flooding receded to the point where the Carlton Reserve was hikeable again. On October 26, 2021, I contacted the descendant's parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, and explained the medical examiner's involvement. I directed Mr. and Ms. Laundrie to contact the Northport Police Department and FBI in regards to the autopsy results and additional investigative information. Mr. and Ms. Laundrie informed me that their son was very healthy and had no known medical history. The descendant did not take any medications and had no known primary care physician. When I asked about the descendant's social history, Mr. and Mrs. Laundrie stated that they did not want to provide that information. Yeah, we know how I feel about that. Hi, Augie, my love. Did I say hi? I'm sorry. Did I miss you? I'm sorry. I miss you. Love you. Hi. And hello, Laura. Yes, I hope you feel better. Thank you for being here. I was contacted by Detective Keller, who advised Agent Bush of the FBI that the firearm collected at the scene was evaluated. The firearm was a European American Arms .38 special on barrel. I don't know about this. .357 Magnum other side of barrel. Based upon the markings and appearance, the firearm was a 𝗦𝘂𝗃𝗃 revolver. The cylinder contained 2 live rounds and 1 spent round of ammunition. On November 9th, 2021 at 1100 hours, Dr. Walsh returned to the descendant's remains to the office of the district medical examiner. On November 11th, the request of the FBI, 2 sections of femur bone and tooth were retained for DNA analysis. On November 19th, I received a lab report DNA analysis via electronic mail of the Pinellas County Forensic Laboratory. The notification was a confirmation on the identity of the skeletal remains on this case. The remains were identified as 23-year-old white male Brian Christopher Laundrie. The notification was signed by the DNA analyst. The above additional information was provided to Dr. Vega. We discussed the descendant's positive identification through DNA analysis. November 23rd, 2021, Roberta and Christopher Laundrie were notified and discussed their son's death certification. Scene investigation. Who? Who did I ignore? What am I missing out at when I'm reading? You guys better be behaving in here in the chat. No. I'm behind on the chat. I feel like homie hang up. Did they do the DNA? Yeah, we're getting there, I think. Scene investigation, 10/20/2021. The Northport Police Department contacted on-call investigator on October 20th, indicating that they believe the remains of the missing individual to be Brian Christopher Laundrie had been found in an area where searches had been initiated several weeks prior. Reportedly in the morning hours, Northport Police Department had groups of personnel that discovered bones and personal belongings consistent with Brian C. Laundrie. The FBI, along with cadaver dogs and other search groups, were continuing to lay out the area where the remains were found. Our assistance was not requested. At this point, later in the day at 16:05 hours, Investigator Busby was contacted to the scene. The late afternoon is a warm and dry day. We are transported from the park entrance to the scene in an ATV, which ultimately headed north in the northeast direction. The scene is a wooded low-lying area with multiple patches of tree and the underbrush mixed with some areas of the open canopy. The ground is moderately dry with lower areas having both damp and wet spots. Upon the arrival at the scene, several tarps and canopies had been set up by law enforcement agencies. We were briefed at the scene by the detective and the leader of the FBI. We were told upon arrival that the area where the remains had been located was previously under up to and possibly more than 3 feet of water for an extended period of time. Initially, the search area had been divided into a main scene and secondary scene. Human remains, animal remains, and evidence have been marked with labeled flags for documentation. Adjacent to the main scene area, a small, currently dry stream bed with a slightly but noticeable deeper elevation is oriented in general east and west direction. Walking the main scene area with Detective Keller discussed human remains, including the right and left scapulae, basically all these bone parts. Also multiple fragments of cranium and skull, along with a generally intact mandible with attached teeth and lower aspect of the maxilla with attached teeth noted. Cervical, thoracic, and lumbar vertebrae are also located nearby. Within the main scene area, several personnel effects are pointed out, including a pair of green shorts in the left debris approximately 20 feet south from the cranial fragments previously described. 2 slip-on shoes approximately 10 feet apart, a white metal ring, and a short barrel revolver with extensive rust are noted on the ground near the previously described cranial fragments. Within 10 to 20 feet west of the larger cranial fragments is a green backpack with associated gear, including a tent and flares. The tent was still in the backpack and was not set up. Approximately 250 feet east in what was initially designated the secondary area, multiple animal bones are identified. A piece of paper and a red hat with the logo MOAB, Moab coffee roasters are noted in the grassy area. We are informed that the apparent dry bag was located in another area approximately 250 feet southwest of the main area, which contained a journal along with the wooden box that contained a small notebook and photographs. Some of the photos included 𝗏𝗏. This is pretty interesting. I'm a nerd, so this is like, I'm going to skip through some of it, though, like I said. It's long, but some of this stuff I don't think we need to worry about. The remainder of the skeletal remains are inventoried by the FBI, released to the medical examiner. The scene is consistent with skeletal remains of a single individual that appear consistent with a moderately young male. The cranial fragmentation and presence of a handgun are consistent with a gunshot injury of the head. Full osteologic examination and cranial reconstruction will be performed to identify potential specific gunshot evidence. All of non-human remains evidence is collected by the FBI for further workup evaluation. Okay, this is a report of autopsy. We're going to skip through some of this, just like I said, for privacy reasons. This is the medical examiner report for 𝗏𝗏. So it's just going over how they found, you know, the skull, the journals, the pictures, all of that. So Torta Pounder, you obviously are not familiar with my channel because we read documents here. I think the biggest document I read was like 100 and something pages. That was a document on inmates being mistreated at Fulton County Jail. So we read a lot of documents. That's why if oh, please. That's a lot. But yeah, if you don't like to listen to me read, then I don't know what to tell you, baby. Hey, Kokomo Corner, good to see you. Listen and learn. Yes. Okay, let's move on. Report of autopsy. Skeletal remains, single individual, scattered remains, positively identified, gunshot wound of the head. The skeletal remains are consistent with a young adult male. The vast majority of the skeleton has been recovered. No soft tissue remains, but for minimal, partially calcified coastal cartilage and the interior aspects of some of the lower ribs. Multiple long bones, including bones of the arms and legs, all disclose carnivore predation activity characterized by gnawing and chewing. Mostly all of the distal ends of the long bones. I haven't read this. Is that in the documentary? Someone let me know, because this is intense. The cranium is in multiple pieces and fragments will be described below. Most of the bones have dark discoloration consistent with dark soil matter where bones were covered. I'm not sure how long the body was out there, to be honest. I thought it was like a month, right? Something like that. They both did. That's intense. Skeletal inventory. We're just going to read through some of this. Right and left maxilla, basically their bodies. Well, Brian's body. Wow. In summary, the vast majority of skeleton is recovered. The cranium is extensively fragmented with the mandible generally intact and lower aspect of the maxilla generally intact, each with some teeth present as described. Many missing bones include 1 mandibular tooth, 5 maxillary teeth, up to 5 craniofacial bone fragments with a moderately large area of the left temporal, lower left parietal, and superior wing of the sphenoid bone that is absent. Also absent are the hyoid bone and the thyroid bone and the cricoid cartilages. The xiphoid process is absent. The ethmoid and lacrimal bones are present and are both patellae. For completeness and quantity of tarsals, metatarsals, phalanges, which are fingers, please refer to the other examination. As previously mentioned, skeletization, total soft tissue, decomposition, and moderate to extensive animal, basically animal eating them, are noted. Most of the distal long bones have moderately extensive carnivore activity, evidenced by multiple gouging, and gnawing marks. These areas are consistent with carnivores and omnivores, including canines such as feral dogs and coyotes, along with rodents and raccoons. The cranium will be reconstructed for further evaluation along with the full osteological exam for more precise changes and examination. The extensive fragmentation with comminuted intersecting skull fractures is consistent with the gunshot wound of the head. The cranial bones recovered include 27 cranial fragments. The reconstructed skull is near complete, having the majority of the cranial bones, and creates a clear picture of the perimortem trauma described below. Evidence of the injury. What did Debbie say? Yes. Yes, be mindful, please. Yes. Thank you, Debbie, for saying that. This is Brian. This is Brian's medical examiner report. In summary, extensive fracturing included comminuted and intersecting linear and basilar fractures. Basically, the cranial fragmentation is consistent with the gunshot wound trauma. Evidence of a single perforating gunshot wound entering the left temporal cranium and exiting the right middle inferior parietal cranium just above the temporal bone is identified. The gunshot wound enters the left side of the head, causing an area of extensive fracturing where the majority of the left temporal bone is absent, along with extreme inferior aspects of the left parietal bone. Dang, we get like all the details here. A 5 by 5.50 centimeter area of the bone is noted without definitive circular or semicircular defect. The presumed exact entrance point is centered in this defect and is estimated approximately 5.8 centimeters below the top of the cranium. The exit wound is located on the right middle inferior parietal bone just above the apex of the temporal bone and is measured 4.5 centimeters. The exit perforation is normal, circumferential, measures 11 to 12 millimeters. No gunfire associated bone discolorations are noted. On the superior aspect of the exit wound is a 1.0 to 0.7 centimeter fragment of the parietal bone. Therefore, the overall pathway or trajectory of the gunshot wound is left to right, very slightly upward, and having little to no significant front or back deviation. We're going to skip through some of this. Associated with the gunshot wound are multiple linear intersecting fractures, including small radian fractures from the parietal bone. This basically just states the nasal bone is horizontally fractured and a piece of the right sphenoid is absent. Toxicology testing results. And I had not looked at this. Comprehensive just green bone right femur, none detected, none detected. Sorry, I'm going to skip through some of this. I want to stay as respectful and not have to. Okay, this part sounds interesting. This individual was remarkably complete. The cranium was fragmentary and compromised 35 fragments. The cranium was reconstructed using Ducco cement. Post-reconstruction, 8 cranial fragments from the sphenoid and orbital bone of the frontal could not be reattached. All further remains present for analysis were morphologically consistent with irregular duplication. So they had to make, these are a lot of numbers. We're going to skip through all of that. Dental inventory. That's crazy. This is public information too, by the way, guys. I'm not up here, reviewing a document. You can legally obtain this from the police department. The photographs have been redacted in accordance with Florida statute. This image was depicting the scene upon arrival, so they're redacted clearly. The bodies, the bones, the remains, pictures of the remains. I'd like to stay respectful, but I wouldn't be interested in seeing these pictures for sure. Right lateral view of the cranium depicting the gunshot defect with radiating fractures for medical examiner case. Oof. Bear with me, guys. I had not read this. After this, we'll watch the body cam footage. This is interesting. I'll have to go back and like, okay, it's over. Okay. Oh wait, what do you guys, yeah, no, so the content that was flagged in my first video was the body cam, but I peeled it and they were good. They wanted me to cut out like 2 minutes of it. Whatever. I'm just gonna let it go. It is what it is. But I don't believe the footage I'm about to play right now is in the documentary. So I'm curious to see what happens. But anyways, with that being said, we just got through Brian's autopsy. You guys kind of get an idea of how his body was found and where. And we're gonna... Thank you, Pantera, for the super sticker. I appreciate you. Hey, Kim. Hi, love. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, toxicology showed nothing. We know that the body was very decomposed and animals and stuff had got to it. Okay, this body cam footage is from the female officer interaction. I had not watched this, so shout out to my girl Plunder. She always hooks it up. I love her. She's a very kind creator. We're going to watch, it's only like 20 minutes long, but this was very interesting to me. I hadn't seen the interaction with the female officer. How do you guys? I'm curious. Let me know. Or if it's in the documentary, let me know.
No, I actually arranged we were allowed to park in a parking lot and like stay at the arch at night, and that was okay. Like I was gonna go get a time lapse.
As long as you're not sleeping in the car, so you do need another place to go after the time lapse.
You know, it takes like 4 hours. So I was gonna do it like all night and then get back in the car and see some like camp.
Okay.
But
because I know you wouldn't be right next to him, but if that or you go to jail and then you're alone without him that way. And it's for tonight. It's to satisfy the courts to basically say that we've eliminated at least the aggression for now. We've given you guys some space and time to calm down.
I just don't want to be separated at all. It was just a silly argument. I was just going to get walked.
A silly argument where it came to putting hands on each other and he's got marks. Silly arguments shouldn't involve hurting each other. I know you didn't, that wasn't the intention, but silly arguments shouldn't go that far. Thank you, thank you.
I'll trust you. Don't open.
I'll give you your money. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, got it. Go for it.
I've been doing step by step with everybody else. Don't worry, I'm not diving for anything. Sorry, no, it's okay. Thank you.
You sure? Okay. It's not what it's called, but it's good.
Hey, Zero.
Correctly, he's your boyfriend?
Yeah.
Fiance. Okay. How you doing? It's okay if you're not okay. I just want to make sure. What was that?
So I distracted him while we were driving, and hit the car a little bit.
Oh, that's
I don't know what the scratches on her face or something. I hit him just like, I can't even hit him that hard. Like, he's really a lot stronger than me. I don't know. It's not like I could even hurt him, but I just hit him like slightly, like I guess in the chest, and I slapped him across the face, but like open, like almost that.
okay. Did he strike you
This
at
is
any
so
time?
sad.
Did you ever get physical, or do you think it was all on yourself?
No, he did a little bit. Just to get back.
I just want to note that we're watching this footage, but the investigative report that we're going to go over in 2 parts, part 1 today and then part 2 tomorrow, because it's super long. Basically the complaint is filed because they did fail in some aspects, which is why I think the family also was entitled to like a civil suit or whatnot. I watched the documentary last night and they played parts of the footage, but not all of it. Okay. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, we love plunder. Sub up to her. I can see how he took her life. I don't know. Like I think her family said that there weren't signs of domestic violence, right? But I'm like, there had to have totally been. Not that I'm saying anything against them. I'm just saying like, that's so sad, right? A lot of the time people don't know what's going on. This must be hard for her family to watch defending him. I agree. Hello, Tony. Good to see you. Thank you, Pantera, for the super sticker again. Thank you for supporting. She's trying so hard to tell her. I know. And Gabby's just like, you know, she's just like being honest about like what she did and putting her hands on him. And it's just, it's so sad because she was the one who we saw in the other live, right? Her bruised face and scratched face. I just don't think it's right. They got him in a hotel room. What's up with that? I know. Right, Debbie? She is an innocent soul. Okay, I'll continue the body cam footage. He seemed controlling, but then tried to act like he wasn't in front of the cops, right? Oh, I was so mad in that live. That's why I members it only, because I'm like, hold up. No amount of money compared to the young girl's life. I agree. 𝗏𝗏. Yes, we do love Wonder. I saw her documentary. Okay, I'm gonna watch it tonight. I keep saying that, but I'm gonna make time to watch it. I know I hear really good things about it.
I can't. It makes me feel really bad saying it, but I know I am.
Well, it's some self-reflection.
Yeah.
Some thinking about our actions going on. That's okay. We can always be better, right? We can always think about why we're doing what we're doing. Not many people get that opportunity to just pick up and go.
Yeah, it's trying really hard to start like a travel vlog.
Take a deep breath. Yeah. I know. You can still do that. Yeah.
I don't know.
This makes me want to cry. Like, she's like, I'm just trying to start a channel blog, and like, they don't know, right, that she's been enduring like this abuse. And so they're just like, oh, it's all right, you got it. But she's like, she's probably thinking like, oh my gosh, I've been trying and trying and trying, and he keeps on knocking me down, and literally physically, right? I believe there definitely were instances of domestic violence. This wasn't the first time. I really don't believe that.
Quite a few hours, something 5 hours. At the coffee shop down there.
Yeah.
Working really hard, and everything she just like sarcastic or something. Like, oh, it's going to be 5 hours, right? I wrote like 5 paragraphs. What? She has no idea. He doesn't even know what I'm doing.
What happened to transform Gabby on that?
So we're gonna skip through that part, but the link is dropped from Plunder if you want to hear her commentary on it. But I just really wanted to watch I had not seen this body cam footage.
That's what we give visitors.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, when you grow up, you're a full-grown man. This is what you'll drink from.
Yay! Welcome, Kelly. Welcome. Kay gifted you. Was that Kay? Yeah, it was.
You'll probably never be a full-grown man.
And then you do curls with it.
Then you can do your curls. So, look, I'm going to speak to you.
It's redacted.
And I'm looking at you not so much like a suspect, but also kind of a victim in the sense that you're dealing with some struggles emotionally and mentally at your age. Probably they'll work themselves out as you get older. There's a lot of mistakes at your age, and I remember being your age too. And hopefully it works itself out. But the stuff you did today was contributed to this. You both contributed to this. Is as a result of your inability to cope with this.
I did hear about that 𝐂𝐸 that's in the movie, right? In the documentary that she called her ex. I almost wonder if that initiated this whole thing. Like, I mean, he was already violent, but I wonder if he was so mad that he was just like, nope, you can't have her. She keeps apologizing and he's all chill, right? They could have told her to take the van and told him to go home, right? She did call her ex. Gabby's clearly trying to tell them without placing the blame on him because she was afraid. Right. 𝗏𝗏 has the exact demeanor as Chris Watts. That's a good point you make. An actor. Yeah, Chris Watts is like the worst of the worst, man. Okay, so someone said, Kelly says, I bawled hard. Okay, so I'm probably going to cry when I watch it too, huh? Oh no, it's a shame they spent so much time on the call, but they didn't take into consideration. Well, in the investigative report that we're going to review, they talk about like a lot of the investigator talks about a lot of the logistics behind that, like how they failed with the calls and stuff. It's very interesting. I hadn't read this report either. This was my first time I got my hands on this report in the Brian autopsy. She was trying to leave him. I think she was too. Another example of looking at women like she's emotional, out of control, right? They just think she's being tóxica, like toxic. Who gifted you? Kay did. Hi, Natasha. Good to see you, love. Thank you for clarifying that, Kim. I knew you weren't lovely. Thank you for clarifying that. I think he was jealous that Gabby was becoming popular and happy. And maybe he found out that she had hit up her ex. And now he's thinking like, oh my gosh, she's creating this blog. She's going to leave me. Sorry for the sound.
I think you would have done better if you had the skills to do better. You don't learn skills until you learn skills. You don't have enough life experience yet to know how to navigate everything. Like, I don't either, but I can navigate what's happening. If I was in your shoes, I can handle it.
You can't read the caption.
But I've got a lot of life lessons to learn still, because like my dad and my grandpa, they don't survive on it, right? They can survive on it. But in a way, I'm just letting you know that
I have a problem with this.
Based on what you said, based on what their witnesses said, based on what your fiance has mentioned, trying very hard to not have you in any trouble. He does have marks on him. The witnesses say was caused like slapping him. And that even you say you slapped him and were addressing him first. And I don't have anyone saying he actually.
It's brought up in the investigative report how they bring up their own personal information and experience with the relationships. You know how they did it in the first body cam, and this guy's like, oh, you know, whatever, and emotionally, like, it goes back to what I was saying, like, they're not professionals in that, like, you're not there to decipher their relationship. And are you professional in domestic violence? Like, take the call, I don't know, arrest them. It says in the investigative report that this was a probable cause for arrest. They could have legally arrested one of them and or both of them. So yes, Moab police did fail in those terms.
You aggressively, it sounds like it was shoving in a manner that was probably more consistent with trying to prevent you from entering the van or to get space from you, not to assail you, if that makes sense. So if the tables were turned and he was beating on you and you were shoving him, of course we're going to look at it like, oh, of course he's defending himself to get away from this guy. But we're kind of looking at the same way with him. And we have to both fair, even if he's a bigger male and you're a smaller female. The law doesn't say, hey, you treat people different based on gender. I'm just saying if I can. Even if it makes no sense, that you probably could not physically destroy this man the way that he could have attacked you. We can't treat you different, okay? So all that long-windedness I'm giving you right now is leading up to the fact that if I put someone on proceeding, I have the right to give them a warning. I have something called officer discretion. But in the legislature in Utah, they have made a law that if we have a domestic assault, they don't trust the police to make good decisions. If we don't talk to their guys, they're not going to give you the discretion. We're going to write a law that says if you have a domestic assault, whether it's male on female or female on male, whoever the primary aggressor is, has to be charged. No choice. You don't get to give a warning. It doesn't matter if he's barely hurt at all, the guy doesn't want to press charges, or the girl doesn't want to press charges. You don't have a choice. We literally have a choice. He does not want to press charges. He says you guys are a team, he says you're a fiance, he says he loves you, he doesn't want anything to happen. But we're saying then you don't have any choice. So we're going to have, we're trying to get local victims advocates on Petito to get him a hotel so that you can have they won't give you the hotel because you're the one who's the primary aggressor. They're going to consider him. They're going to get him.
Wait, let's go back to the hotel thing. Like, I'm shook that they took him to a hotel. Like, why not take him to the police department and have someone pick him up there? I never knew that they like pulled you over, let you go, and then got you like a hotel to stay at. Or probably Brian paid for the hotel. I'm not sure about that information.
He wants you. You don't have to go to jail. The only thing we can do is take you to jail. Because suppose she doesn't have to go to jail, then I will accept to take him out and give me a hotel and keep the time back. When you get the ticket, it's going to give you a phone number to call, and they're going to give you a court date, and that court date will probably be online. So it will be online. You have a smartphone? So I can put your face yeah. When COVID happened, they switched all the courts from in person to online. So when I go to court now, I understand, but we don't have any, like, listen, if I had any discretion in this, I would separate you guys today and stop this stuff. But I lawfully don't have discretion. I don't have any. Just do it. And that's what you said. You just said it all matches nicely. That you were the primary aggressor, and that the increase you had the product that
She was the primary aggressor.
nothing is possible about it. Normally we'll take people to jail, but he's trying to work you. Have a man tomorrow. The very best thing I can do is call my supervisor and see if I'm missing something. Hey, Gabby, can I calm down and I'm going to go call a supervisor? But I don't think there's much I can do, but let me see if the supervisor can help me out. Hey, give me a minute, okay? You don't have to sit out outside unless you want.
No, that's fine. Calm her down a little bit. Okay.
Right.
So this is a good option. I know it's not optimal, but this is you not going to jail.
I can't get one in a place I don't know where I am. Well, I know I'm use that.
I know. But I mean, you could get a hotel. You could get another campground. Are you guys going to stay in the campground tonight? Okay. So was it the same campsite you stayed in last night?
No, I actually arranged for lots of park in a parking lot and like stay at the art and that was okay. I was gonna go get a time lapse.
As long as you're not sleeping in the car, but you do need another place to go after the time lapse.
It takes like 4 hours. So I was gonna do it like all night and then get back in the car and not like camp.
Okay.
But
because I know you wouldn't be right next to him, but
This is so sad.
Or you go to jail and then you're alone without him that way.
Hey, John.
And it's for tonight. It's to satisfy the courts to basically say that we've eliminated at least the aggression for now. We've given you guys some space and time to calm down.
I just don't want to be separated at all. It was just this silly argument where it's just going to get walked.
A silly argument where it came to putting hands on each other and he's got marks.
Wow.
Silly arguments shouldn't involve hurting each other. I know you didn't, that wasn't the intention, but silly arguments shouldn't go that far.
Can I, is there any way to get my phone so I can call my mom?
I can find out. Give me just a minute. I'm going to close this. Take a deep breath, okay?
Oh my gosh.
Be right back.
Right. I agree.
She is. She likes her phone. Do you happen to know where it is? Without going for it, where is it? Yeah, go ahead and tell me if you don't mind.
They should have both been arrested.
I can grab it because it's in its mouth.
I'm sorry. If they both physically had marks on them, I don't care how bad it was. I think they both should have been arrested. It's in the report we're going to go over too. I think, yeah. Yeah, this is the women's body cam. I had never seen it, so we're covering it.
Good with you. Where are we going in the car?
I haven't watched the documentary
Like,
yet.
is it in something? Is it in a bag or? It's very.
There it is. Okay.
Oh, got it. Go for it.
I've been doing step by step with everybody
Yeah,
else.
no, that's
Don't worry, I'm not diving for anything.
Well, you're watching, you're all saying you were late.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Oh, and it looks like your dad's calling right now?
So this full video is already, I worked on it this week. I put it up on my,
Okay, so that's who I got the body cam footage. There's a couple more minutes left. We'll review it. That's Plunder, by the way, Paula. I love her.
Where'd you guys meet?
You went to the same school. Okay.
They're asking him where they met. Is that relevant right now?
Is this usually how the arguments go? I mean, has this happened before?
Not really.
Not really? Okay.
Not like, not crazy like this.
Okay. So this is abnormal. This doesn't happen a lot.
This is that. Okay. I think it's because you're really dehydrated. I haven't drank water all day.
Yeah, you gotta drink that water. Yeah, we're just trying to paint a picture to get all that,
That's sad. She's like, we're dehydrated, so we were both like in a bad, irritable mood.
all the pieces together to make sure you're good. To make sure you're both good. Yeah.
All signs of domestic violence. That she's the victim. Hi, DC girl. Hi, love. Thank you for
And
being
so
here.
you said that you guys were, it got heated, he locked you out of the car, but then you got back in the car, and
He
then,
liked me on the car just like he went for a walk too, and then like.
okay, so you were both out of the car.
He's like,
Okay.
take a breather outside. I'm gonna walk over here. And I was like, no, please let me in.
Okay. And how did you describe
Locking her out of a car.
You said that he kind of swerved and hit the curb. You said that you were distracting him.
Oh yeah, I yelling and I like touching her shoulder a little bit, like just like lightly and like like her good kind of go on.
Do you think it's safe to hit somebody while they're driving?
No, I wasn't trying to do it hard, but I know. But then he
Did they ever ask her, like, did he put hands on you? Like, did I miss something here?
looked at me, so
Okay, that's when he. Okay.
like turned his whole body. You know, an accident.
Okay. He's got some other scratches, looks like on his face. Did you hit him on the arm? Did you hit him on the side of his head?
I don't know what the scratches on her face are from. I hit him just like I can't even hit him that hard. Like he's really a lot stronger than me. I don't know. It's not like I could even hurt him, but I just hit him like lightly, like I guess in the chest, and I slapped him across the face, but like open, like normal fast. Okay.
Wow.
I don't know if maybe my rings hurt him, but
Okay.
he was looking at me.
Within his right side if he was driving? Or did he look at you and then...
No, he was looking at me, so it would have been your left, his left. I don't know which side. But I don't know. He's always taking, he's very advocating, so kind of cute. He's always kind of.
Yeah, okay. I'm just making
She's like, that wasn't me, but
Did he strike you at any time? Did you ever get physical, or do you think it was all on your side?
No, he did a little bit. Just to get back. Not to hurt you, to stop you. I don't know, I can't it made me feel really bad saying it, but I know I am.
Well, it's some self-reflection.
Yeah.
There's some thinking about our actions going on. That's okay. We can always be better, right? We can always think about
This is
why we're
heartbreaking.
doing what we're doing. Okay. And so you
she's like looking at everything she did wrong, but he's been the one who's been like the primary aggressor. I believe she played a role in it, maybe because she was in this toxic relationship, but right. Yeah, I feel like in California too, like they would just arrest you. I don't even think some cops here you don't even have to have any marks. If they think it was violent enough, they'll arrest you. I've seen that happen. It's sad.
said you haven't had a lot of water to drink today. That can affect everything. Yeah.
This is Utah, but they lived in Florida, right?
Yeah, that's a lot. You are just a fancy house plant.
Yeah.
With emotions, you need to make sure you're drinking. Yeah. Have you guys been camping in the transit van too?
Yeah.
It's been great. We've been staying at a lot of the Bureau Linen Homes.
And like if they were mental health professionals, they would be able to tell her behavior from being trauma behavior, or you know what I mean? Like these cops are just cops. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm not very fond of them. You can probably tell that by how angry I was in my first live. Oops.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Sorry, not sorry.
And we've been following that and preserving a bunch of campground on the national park.
And how much longer is the trip? When were you headed back?
Actually, I didn't have a plan at all. Our plan was we're gonna go to Yellowstone and Glacier and make our way to Washington. And then we were gonna go to Portland, and that's where I kind of ended our plan. We were gonna start you've ever heard of 𝗏𝗏? What? 𝗏𝗏? It's worldwide opportunities on organic farming.
Oh, there.
Like,
Yeah, typical victim behavior. I can appreciate the little music. At least it's not that loud ass noise from the body cam.
Yeah, have some more water. It's good for you.
Have some more water. It's good
What's
for you.
making you emotional right now? What do you
I would have been like, "Are you charging me with something?"
like, mommy, like,
If so, I'd like a lawyer.
I don't know. I only have I give myself like 2 more days, and I say I can go on.
Yeah,
And
I love that she includes that in there. She's so freaking
I
cute.
sat for quite a few hours, something 5 hours, at the coffee shop down there.
yeah.
Working really hard, and everything she did, like, asking for something, like, oh, it's going to be 5 hours, right? And I'm like, 5 paragraphs. What? She has no idea. He doesn't even know what I'm doing.
It sounds like you guys might just need to work
He
on your
doesn't even know how to use a computer. He doesn't know what I'm doing.
Have you told him how you feel? Have you told him how
And he's getting mad at me for it. Oof. So many red flags. You're right. 𝗟EITG isn't qualified. Yeah, they usually never are. I agree with the gem. They should have both taken him in for questioning. Right. If the roles were reversed, would a guy be allowed this much latitude? Nope. Nope. They were treating her like she's a hormonal emotional mess. Yes, Kim, I agree. She said way too much. This is a lesson for everybody. Don't say anything. Yep, Laura, I'm big on this. I didn't learn this until a while. I had to go through a lot to learn that one. You absolutely don't have to talk to any police ever. And I'm not illegal. Don't take any advice from me. I'm just little Melly sitting up here, but I'm telling you from experience, commentary purposes, educational purposes. Yeah, she's sitting there conversing with her. Right. Hey, ATS, good to see her. Good to see you. He only knows how to text himself using Gabby's phone. The cop should be more trained in abuse situations. I agree. I taught my kid this out of the womb. Has Brian been physically abusive towards her in the past? I believe a lot of, yeah, I do. I do. We don't know that though, and I don't think her family was aware of it, how bad it was. But I think if it got to this point, I think it was pretty bad. Yeah, don't come for me. 22 years old, a shitty boyfriend a million miles away. Yeah, I would be freaking out too. If cops want to talk to you, they need evidence. I think the males there would have taken Brian out for a beer. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the officers involved. Oh, don't worry. I have their names in this investigative report. We're going to look into that.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, it's okay that we can take 5 hours for a hike, but we can't.
I forget. It was like officer.
And if it's important to you, yeah.
I've been trying to
that's a doorway into it. That's the way a lot of people use it.
He's like an amazing artist, and I control his Instagram. Like I pretend to be him on Instagram. He can't. He's supposed to.
So he was having a lot of envy and jealousy and rage over the fact that she was getting bigger. She was going to do her little vlog channel. She was on Instagram, and then here he says, she was basically pretending to be him on his Instagram.
Like the world needs to see this, right? Like you do amazing stuff, and so I always encourage him. And he's like, I just want to not have phones and be in the market. I'm like, that's great. Like that. Look, you gotta tell people that you want to live that way. Like it's hard because I'm the opposite. Yeah. Like on the computer, you want to post about it. You want to, like you said, you want to write about it. Yeah. Not for anything, but just to,
Wow.
like, I don't know, as a way of work. Like,
I'm shook.
Like, I have so many people who are traveling or want to travel, or so many people are stuck home and they read these blogs because they can't get out. So I think it's really important to share. And,
yeah, it sounds like you guys just need to talk about it because it's causing stress that you're kind of butting heads on it. He doesn't think it's worthwhile. You think it really is. And it's okay to have differing opinions. But when it comes to blows, when it comes to even just playful, even just, oh, I didn't mean to hurt him, like you were saying, it's got to be better than this, you know? It's got to be better than this. Where were you guys going to head to after this?
I was going to try to get a time lapse for the arch tonight of her, actually. So we were going to fill our water.
You got some time before it goes down. You're not. I wouldn't be worried about that right now.
That was my only plan for the night. Otherwise, I was just working on my computer literally all day. That was my plan.
I'm so upset for her.
Have you guys been out to Delicate before?
I know, never. Okay. Yesterday was our first time.
Yeah, we like to call it the license plate arch because it's what you find on a lot of the Utah license plates. And we find that when a lot of people come to visit, then they say, where's the arch? That's the arch they're talking about. We have over 2,000 of them, but that is the one that everyone comes to see. Do you have footwear that's not flip-flops? Like maybe better arch support or... Because you're going, it's a trail that you're hiking straight up the slick rock. Those are going to not go too well for you.
Oh, no, yeah, I have a hiking before. I wore a pair, and actually a barefoot. He's a barefoot. Oh, nice.
A barefoot hiker?
Thank you. Especially with how hot the rock is. I wouldn't even want to try it.
I don't know if you know what the Appalachian Trail is?
I do, yeah. I haven't been on it, but I do.
He hikes the whole thing. But I don't think
you're going to sticker
for
that? I mean, that's awesome.
I know, I should like send them
put your name on a plaque or something, because so very few people have done that.
Maybe not the entire test, but like at least 95% of it, you know, that's barefoot. And I did it in like
That's pretty cool.
It was really, really nice. We went up the arch. We went at like 7 a.m. So, and it was Monday.
I was going to say, you said you'd never been there.
Yeah, the day. Yeah, it was there. I don't know what day it is today. I've lost track of time. We were camping in the park. So we went Monday morning at like 7 a.m. to see the arch. And there wasn't a lot of people up there. I was really surprised. There was a short line to like wait and take your picture.
It's nice when people are actually waiting in line.
Yeah. I thought that. I was like, wow.
Like a whole ass personal conversation.
Yeah.
And so someone had like kindly took our photo, and then we went. I don't know, like you know how like that back of the arch, they like slopes down.
I don't remember having a conversation like this by anyone who was pulling me over. I don't think the cops thought they were doing them a favor by not arresting either one of them. That's why I don't hate these cops too much. And if you know me, that's not like me at all. This is making me angry. When it repeats, when it's repeat calling, she doesn't press charges. They get tired of coming out. Oh, is that about your sister? As well as they teach kids, yeah. He's very insecure, coercive, control, and narcissism go hand in hand. I think his mom is just one just because, yeah. Oh, we're not fans of Roberta here. No. Mm-mm. Me, no likey. I think so too, yeah. Yes, sending love to the Petito family. They're amazing people. We see them all over online, but it's rough, I'm sure. The video should be used in police training to show how a nurse can save a life. I agree, Jem. My sister hid it for years because she didn't want me doing life. She was able to finally get away. Right? 90% of the women don't. Right. It's sad seeing her smile and the potential of her whole life ahead of her destroyed. I know. At minimum, they should have had to contact her mom or dad. I would have.
Get on that side.
I would have been like, either come help me or you're about to have to bail me out.
And I thought it was fake still because it was still bare rock, and I thought, like, you're still able to go there. And I found this like really narrow path that I like shimmy myself along, and there's big flat rock, like directly, like an arches, and then the big flat rock like sticking out.
That's a good one, Kim. Go her.
Like, I saw it a clip, and it was like so steep down the side.
That is true, Tony.
And it was like such a nice flat, like deep spot to sit on, and it was like perfect, like in the center of the arch, like just looking up. And it was like at the right angle, so you could only sometimes see people's hands sticking up when they were taking their photo. And that was really nice. We got there for 2 hours. People were like, "How did you get over there?" Like, "Can I go?" And the guy tried to come our way.
There's some treacherous terrain out there. There is.
We had to climb like Spider-Man up the rock and help him back out to his right. She was left. Giving us a big thumbs up.
Yeah, thank you.
Like, and it was really funny that people were shouting at us, like, "How did you do that?" Like, it was so.
I agree, Jahira.
Everyone's got to get that picture, right?
Yeah.
They want to be able to recreate it. But yeah, definitely drink your water, especially on that hike. That's gonna drain you real quick.
Oh yeah.
And then it's not an enjoyable hike for anybody. Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it that way.
Awkward?
He said he doesn't like to post things, but you're the one that's posted for him.
Yeah. I think that just came out. He was fidgeted because like he feels like I don't know how to explain it. Like I'm working on so much, like, and that like he feels bad that I'm working on so much, so it just came out. He feels like I think it just came out that he feels like I'm not enjoying it.
Oh, gotcha. And you enjoy it different ways.
Yeah. I'm enjoying it my way, but I always say, I'm happy here. That's what I always tell him. I'm happy here. Leave me. Whatever you want to do. That's usually how he goes for lots more hikes than I do. Because I like to sit back and.
Oh, okay. You want to enjoy it right there. He wants to keep on exploring.
Yeah. Okay. Sometimes, depending on where.
So they didn't have anything in common.
How you feeling?
Like,
You have nothing to say for.
Wow. Her emotions, like how she goes from laughing to talking about whatever they were talking about that was not relevant to any of this. But hey, and then she's back to being upset, right? All signs of being a victim. I agree, Jem. You didn't want her to get all the attention.
But it was June 2021, however, when they left.
Okay, so you can go watch Plunder's. I think there's more of the Plunder does her commentary, but the rest of it, I think, is just them basically being separated. We can watch a little bit of
He
it.
doesn't want to not be with him tonight.
I think it cuts off.
That's what we said. Yeah. So that's nothing is calling supervisor.
sorry, I wasn't sure if you could see me.
No, that's okay.
Is it possible that maybe if anyone has service, I just love service.
We're probably not going to have any better.
He's like so excited.
Yeah.
Okay. If you just answer, just now on one part. Every time I answer the call, it's
You might be able to get out texting.
sorry.
No, it's okay. But just to reiterate, Gabby, these might be your only two options. Either you go to jail or we separate you for tonight and you're in a much better place tomorrow to figure it out together. I'll give you some time.
Yeah, I wasn't very nice about the police department in my last life because the abuser thinks they got away with it. Gabby wasn't giving him her undivided attention. Yeah, I agree, Kim. So he's jealous of everything she did. The discussion was triggering her in itself. Right. I think I remember the cop drives him to the hotel. Yeah, he does. You're right, Laura. Yeah, I don't know what all these side conversations about whatever they're having. I just made a decision. I don't think we should give them slack. Millions of people saw the body cam footage before she was found. Right. Speculated her demise right off the bat. If the police took Brian to a hotel, how did Gabby end up with him? They met up, right? The next day. Was it the next day? That wasn't very good advice. Yeah, they shouldn't even be giving advice on stuff they're giving advice on, and then they're a hot mess. Which is why we're going to go over the investigative report on the Moab Police Department. It's like
him by hitting him, and then he probably looked at her, and that's why the mark is on the window side. And she said
she picked him up
because she was distracting him by hitting him. And she said she didn't try to hurt him. It wasn't malicious. She thought that he wasn't listening to her.
So assault is an attempt with unlawful torture, violence, or bodily injury to another. Code for bodily injury, the definition says bodily injury is infliction of pain or physical impairment.
She goes and picks him up, yeah, and then he kills her. Wow.
So you can go.
Wow.
Just now, I'm recording.
The rest of this kind of sucks. I'm not gonna lie.
You get a hold of your dad?
I think yeah, for a few months.
I'll tell you what the plan is. But whatever happens from here on out, learn from this. Do better than what happened today, okay? For both of you. I appreciate that. Thank you. That was my hope that I would help a little bit. Yeah. And we've got more water, so you don't have to guzzle it. So you don't have to nurse it either. We can get you some more.
And Gabby and Brian,
So we find out, that's when they get separated. It is really sad. I know. Her emotions are all over the place. Yeah, they are. They are. Okay, we're going to read through just some of this report. It's 100 and something pages, so we're going to do part 1 tonight and then part 1 tomorrow. This was kind of talks about that night too, this day that they were arrested or separated by the police department. It's an investigative report of the review of August 12th, the Petito-Laundrie Incident. It's really interesting. I read through some of it. I was shook because it goes in line with what I was saying on my other live, that police department totally failed them. Could it have been possible that Gabby could still be alive? Part of me thinks, yeah, the laughing is a coping mechanism. If she would have just called her parents, they could have come taking her away, right? Right. You make up, you fight. It's going to get better. I know. And how much you want to please that person too, right? Whether it's mentally, physically, or emotionally. It's so sad. The cycle of domestic violence, right? Okay, so we're going to read just a couple pages of this, and then we'll do the other part 2 and finish it tomorrow. After a formal complaint was filed with the Moab Police Department, an independent law enforcement agency has completed a thorough review of the August 12th, 2001 domestic violence incident involving Gabby Petito and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. The independent agency investigative report finds that the officers who responded to the incident made several unintentional mistakes that stem from the fact that officers failed to cite Ms. Petito for domestic violence. The city acknowledges that this finding may raise questions, and the issue is examined extensively in this investigative report. The report recommends improvements to both the policies and the training of the Moab City Police Department. These recommendations include providing additional training in domestic violence investigation, as well as additional legal training to ensure officers understand state laws and statutes, conducting an overall policy review, conducting a software review, and strengthening the review process for incident reports. The investigative report also finds that a statement was never obtained from the original 911 caller and recommends that be done to make the incident report more complete. The city intends to implement the report's recommendations. Based on the report's finding, the city of Moab believes our officers showed kindness, respect, and empathy in their handling of this incident. As the Moab City Police Department continues its mission to serve our community, efforts are underway to provide additional resources and tools to assist them in addressing domestic violence incidents. Plans are in place to add a trained domestic violence specialist to oversee incidents investigated by Moab police officers. Well, just a little too late. Well, we will also implement added and ongoing training and testing to ensure that officers understand policies and procedures. The city of Moab sends our sincere condolences to the Petito family. Our hearts go out to them as they continue to deal with the tragic loss of their daughter. Let's see. Introduction. On September 27th, 2021, I was asked to conduct an independent investigation into the way Moab Police Department handled a domestic violence incident that occurred on August 12th, 2021. The incident has been documented by Moab police officers Pratt and Robbins as identified by Moab PD, case number, etc. There were also two additional officers on scene, Park Ranger Melissa Holes, that's who we saw in the video, and Park Ranger Ryan Krall. The incident involved Brian Christopher Laundrie and Gabriella Gabby Petito. I was asked to conduct this investigation by Chief Brett Edge and Assistant Chief Braden Palmer. Officer Pratt has worked with the Moab Police Department intermittently since July of 2018. This included part-time employment and full-time employment. Officer Pratt returned full-time with Moab Police Department in December of 2020. Has approximately 16 years of law enforcement. Officer Robbins was hired in May of 2021, had no prior law enforcement experience, and at the time of the incident, Officer Robbins was on the final phase of his field training program. So the officer who was there wasn't even fully trained yet in his position. I'm shook. I've been forwarded an email from the complainant attorney Tanya Reeves, which I have attached to this report. Chief Edge indicated the Moab Police Department received the complaint and they believe there's value and insight to be gained from having an independent investigation that will ultimately provide insight and improve the department's responses to domestic violence cases moving forward. The investigator in this case is Captain Brandon Ratcliffe, who is employed by the Price City Police Department. Excuse me. There are many what-ifs that have been presented in itself as part of the investigation. The primary one being, would Gabby be alive today if the case was handled differently? That is an impossible question to answer, despite it being the answer many people want to know. Nobody knows, and nobody will ever know the answer to that question. My job is to provide information into the details of the investigation and if it was handled appropriately. Hey, Alex, good to see you. Most victims wind up dead. She's dead, therefore she's a victim. She was definitely the ultimate victim, in my opinion. Yeah. The investigation arises after Moab City Police Department, this is a synopsis, received a complaint about the way Moab Police was the case handled by Moab Police. The complaint was received by Moab Police Department. I can't even talk. You guys are distracting me. I don't think anyone would take the stance. Interesting. Differing opinions are welcome. Okay, back to this. The complaint was received by Moab Police Department on September 21st, 2021 by Tonya Reeves. A follow-up complaint was received by Tonya Reeves on October 1st, 2021. I was asked to complete this investigation on September 27th, 2021. A summary of the facts in this case will be detailed below. The summary will come from information obtained from the police reports, dispatch notes, and audio witness statements and body-worn camera video of the incident. Initial call to dispatch. On August 12th, 2021, the Grand County Dispatch Center received a call from Redacted, who was calling to report what he described a domestic dispute. Redacted reports he was driving and saw a gentleman slapping the girl, stated that he stopped driving and the male and female ran up and down the sidewalk, where he proceeded to hit her. Redacted stated they hopped in the van and drove off. Redacted said he took a picture of the license plate and describes the vehicle and the license plate information. Redacted further describes the make, model, and other characteristics of the van. Dispatch action. Dispatch uses the emergency tone alerts all law enforcement working in the area of the call they just received. Dispatch states they had a report of a male hitting a female and the van left northbound from Moonflower Community Co-op. Dispatch further provided a description of the vehicle to law enforcement. Moonflower Community Co-op. Officer Pratt arrives on the scene at Moonflower Community Co-op where the incident took place and asks dispatch for the reporting party's phone numbers. Officer Pratt also tells dispatch he spoke to another witness who gave more details on the vehicle that left. Based on Officer Pratt's report, the witness Officer Pratt is referring to is redacted. They're just hitting like the main points of this case. Traffic stop. Officer report Robbins stops the vehicle on a turn-off road that goes into the Arcs National Park after he observed the van cross over the double yellow line and crosses back over and hits the curb on the passenger side. Officer Robbins reports to dispatch the driver may be intoxicated after observing the driving pattern. Officer Robbins stops the vehicle and has the female exit the vehicle, separating the male and female passenger. From this point forward, the male and female, Brian and Gabby, never speak to each other again while law enforcement is in contact. Brian Laundrie statements to law enforcement. Brian stated that he and Gabby had not been drinking and said it had been, quote unquote, a long day. Brian stated that the, quote unquote, little squabble started earlier this day when they were at the coffee shop. Brian stated they had been there for so long, from about 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Brian stated that the flies had been intense and that the flies had definitely been getting to her, referring to Gabby. Brian stated when they got back to the van, there was some little dirt at the back of the van. Brian stated he moved their food around and there was little disagreement here. But when asked about the disagreement, Brian stated that it wasn't much of a disagreement, but went on to say he had dirty feet and said there were little things, relationship things they were arguing about. Brian stated Gabby was working on her website and blog and said he gave her time. Brian stated they had a nice morning, but Gabby got worked up as they were trying to get their day going. Brian said he tried to distance himself from Gabby by locking the van up and walking away. Brian said while doing this, he suggested to Gabby they both take a breather. Brian said he felt that was the only way for them to calm down, but Gabby was getting worked up. Brian said Gabby had her phone and was trying to get the keys from him, and that this is when he was pushing her away. Brian said he knew he shouldn't have pushed her, but stated he was trying to push her away, stating that they needed to take a minute, step back, and breathe. Brian said he had the keys because he didn't want Gabby to go anywhere as he didn't have his phone, then added that he doesn't really have a phone and was worried about her leaving without him and him being left alone. Later on, Brian would provide Officer Robbins his phone number and confirmed the number by looking at his cell phone. This was interesting considering he had previously stated that he didn't really have a phone. Interesting. Brian said things weren't, quote unquote, physical before the point. Brian said, quote unquote, let's just take a breather, stating he was locking up the van and they should go for a walk. Brian said it was at that time Gabby was trying to take the keys from him, where he demonstrated pushing her away and said that it is then when she hit me. Brian said he didn't get, quote unquote, really physical, but stated he was just trying to push Gabby away and not get hit. Brian said this was when he got really loud and stated that was probably what drew everyone's attention. Brian said he was yelling, "Back up, get away." And Brian said he was trying to make her calm down and pointing out to Gabby that, quote unquote, everyone's watching. Let me check in with you guys. Make sure you guys are behaving. Right. When someone ends your life, you're a victim. I agree with that, Tony. If that's the case, he could leave instead of taking her life. She's a victim. She lost her life. I had a relationship like that. If I shoved a man, he shoved me back. He wouldn't kill me. Hey, Francis. Good to see you. Welcome. Patty. Wait, he unalived her, right? He lied because he said he didn't have a phone. Gabby was defending herself. Do you think Watts was a victim too? Absolutely not. I wouldn't even think that if I was... Brian locked her out of the van. Yeah, the locking her out is like, okay. Amber Heard is an example. Make her. I know, I've got behind in the comments. Okay, let's continue. Brian said the injury near his eye was from Gabby's phone. Brian said Gabby had jumped on him and was swinging when he pushed her. Brian stated Gabby also wore rings, and the combination of the phone, her rings, and her nails was what likely caused his injuries. Parker Ranger Ryan Krall points out scratches on the left side of Brian's neck, left side of his nose, scratch near the center of his face, and bruise and bleeding on the right side of his head. Officer Robin finds an additional injury on Brian's right tricep area. Brian said he was not in any pain and that he was not complaining. When asked about medication, Brian said he doesn't take any, but said Gabby has told him in the past to take Xanax because he has high anxiety. When asked if Gabby takes medication, he replies while chuckling and smirking, quote unquote, "She's just crazy." Brian then immediately takes back the comment by saying he is kidding. In regards to the driving behavior, Brian stated that he hit the curb because Gabby grabbed and turned the wheel. Brian said Gabby told him, quote unquote, "I can't believe we're getting pulled over," when she grabbed the wheel. When asked about his speed, Brian stated it was probably from the adrenaline of getting pulled over and Gabby grabbing the wheel, further stating he was still shaken up from everything that had just happened. Brian apologized multiple times for his driving, stating that if he was driving too fast before ever getting pulled over, he was sorry. Brian said they were headed back to the park to get water. Gabby Petito's statement to law enforcement. While still in the vehicle, Gabby is asked why she was crying. Gabby stated that they have been fighting in the morning, stating that they had personal issues. Gabby states, "I was distracting him from driving. I'm sorry." We kind of know a little bit of this. Once separated, Gabby said she was having a very stressed morning, later confirming they have not been drinking and that they did not drink. Gabby said she was trying to get work done and was apologizing to Brian after she had thrown a bunch of stuff in the back of the van. Gabby said she gets so stressed out and has OCD. Gabby further stated that she has a mean attitude but was not trying to be mean about straightening things up. Gabby said she was apologizing but said it in a mean tone, and Brian got frustrated with her and locked her out of the van and told her to go take a breather. Gabby said she wanted to get going and said they were out of the water and they were going to the park to refill the water. Gabby states she's trying to start a blog and is building her website and has been stressed about it. Gabby stated she had so much work she was doing on her computer and said Brian doesn't really believe that she can do any of it, which was upsetting to her. Gabby states they have been fighting all morning and that Brian wouldn't let her in the van before. I'm just like shook. We've seen this in the body cam, but I'm shook. Isn't it interesting to like watch the body cam footage and stuff online in videos, but then when you actually have the documents, it's so different, right? That's why I always read the documents. When asked why Brian wouldn't let her in the van, Gabby said Brian told her she needed to calm down. Gabby said she's perfectly calm and states Brian really stresses her out and says it has been a rough morning. Gabby said Brian walked away to take a breather, but she didn't want to. Gabby said she wanted to sit in the van because all of her stuff was in there. Gabby stated she had been working in the van and that is where she wanted to be. Gabby said Brian told her to relax, but she didn't want to, so she got real mad. Gabby was asked about the injuries on her left cheek and left arm. Gabby initially said she wasn't sure what caused it, stating the incident happened really fast. Gabby said she was trying to get back in the van and said that Brian's backpack was what got her. Gabby was told about witnesses that reported Brian had hit her. Gabby responded, quote unquote, to be honest, I definitely hit him first. Gabby says she had slapped Brian a couple of times and Brian kept telling her to shut up. Gabby said she hit Brian as, quote unquote, I was trying to get him to stop telling me to calm down. Gabby said Brian reached by grabbing her arm so I wouldn't slap him. Officer Pratt asked if Brian only grabbed her and she said, yeah. Officer Pratt then asked, did he hit you though? Gabby replied saying, I guess, but I hit him first. So in other terms, she's basically saying, yeah, I hit him, but because he hit me first. So is she the primary aggressor? No, she's not. And we're all entitled to our own opinions. I don't knock that. And any opinion is welcome on my chat. I think you guys know me well enough, right? But we will stay respectful to Gabby and her family. Absolutely. Gabby stated Brian grabbed my face, I guess, while demonstrating the action. Gabby states, like he didn't punch me in the face. Gabby said Brian grabbed her face and said she could feel a cut on her left cheek. Gabby stated when she touches it, it burns. When asked about the van hitting the curb, Gabby said, quote unquote, I hit him, and stated that that was the reason Brian hit the curb. Gabby stated she was hitting Brian while he was driving, but not a lot, yeah. Not a lot, but yeah. Gabby said it didn't last long, and she said she saw the police car behind them, and she demonstrated throwing a punch. Gabby said it was when she saw the police lights that she hit Brian and said, you're so stupid, or you're an idiot. Gabby said she did not touch the steering wheel, but only for like a second. I just saw the lights come on. Gabby demonstrated the punch she did to Brian while stating, you're an idiot. Gabby was asked again if she ever touched the steering wheel, and Gabby said, no, I did not touch the steering wheel at all. Gabby was asked if she takes any medication. She stated she didn't. Gabby said she does yoga as a coping mechanism and states that she has high anxiety and OCD. When asked if Brian is patient with her, Gabby said, yeah, but I get it. Just makes me upset. I know he definitely gets frustrated with me a lot because I have a lot of anxiety and he definitely has anxiety too. So mental health plays a factor in this, right? A huge role. And what they were both dealing with as individuals and coming together as a couple that leads to domestic violence, right? And I think these comments like I have anxiety and OCD, and it's so vague, right? And it's not all black and white with mental health. We talk about that here a lot on my channel. And I feel like these are all such red flags. Like there was other issues I think that they had individually, and then coming together, both going to mental health issues, I don't think was the best like mix, clearly, right? When somebody grabs you by your face, that's a threat. The next action they would take, right? Even if it doesn't give them a right to take her life. Right. Okay, moving on. Redacted written and verbal witness statement. So this is probably the person that called 911. Officer Pratt called one of the witnesses redacted via cell phone. Redacted also provided a sworn statement later on. Redacted stated he had observed Brian and Gabby involved in a dispute. Redacted stated from what he could tell that it appeared at one point they may have been fighting over a phone, and Redacted thought it may have been Gabby's phone. Redacted reported Brian was trying to keep Gabby from getting into the van. Redacted said Brian was sitting in the driver's seat while Gabby was trying to get into the van through the driver's side door. Redacted said Gabby hit Brian a few times in the arm and or face while trying to get into the vehicle. Redacted said Gabby forced her way over to Brian's lap via the driver's side door and got into the passenger seat. Redacted heard Gabby tell Brian, why do you have to be so mean? Redacted stated he wasn't sure if it was play fighting, stating Gabby's punches were nothing like slugs to the face, but Redacted felt something was off and had a weird vibe. Redacted stated he wasn't sure how serious the incident was to him, but it seemed like Brian was trying to leave Gabby and possibly take her cell phone. The cell phone was an issue, right? He didn't have one, and he lies about it, but again, I'm curious if they say it in the documentary, what day she texted her ex-boyfriend, because if it was the same day, I believe truly in my heart that a lot of this started from him finding that text message of her texting her ex-boyfriend, or no? I felt like that would have set him off. It's possible she feared what he would do if she had told the police the truth. So many possibilities. Thank you, Natasha. I really appreciate that. Yes, please hit the like button, subscribe, do all them things. Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you. He was controlling her, yeah. He was mad about her phone. Like, yo. You know what I mean? Let me get a drink. Okay. This is a really good report, you guys. Like, thanks for hanging out and reading it. Like, it's so good. It's really long. I have to break it up into 2 parts, but it's worth it, I think, to get all the information, right, from all angles. Like, we see the body cam footage. We hear from her parents, but her parents claim they didn't know there was DV. So really, they only know to some extent, right? And then we see interviews and other content creators, and we saw the autopsy. But I think this is such an important document because it's an investigation on the Moab Police Department, the people who were there in the body cam, right, and how they failed. And we all believe that, is it possible Gabby could have been still alive? Sure. Was it fate? Maybe. If you want to talk about spirituality, I don't know. That could be a whole ass conversation. But I think this report is so important, and I'm surprised that I hadn't heard about it. Officer Pratt asked if Redacted ever saw Brian strike Gabby. Redacted hesitated in his answer and stated he maybe saw a push or shove, but nothing like a full punch to the face or anything. Officer Pratt asked if Redacted could tell if the push or shove was an aggressive action or a defensive maneuver. Redacted wasn't sure, stating it was a good question and wasn't entirely sure what was going on. Redacted said it appeared to him that Brian was trying to close off the passenger side of the vehicle and close things up. Redacted said Brian put a backpack or something on the back of the vehicle. Redacted said Brian was stepping into the vehicle and Gabby was out trying to get in. Redacted said he didn't see anything that was Brian kicking Gabby or hitting Gabby, further stating the fighting was kind of light and they were laughing. Redacted again said that Brian was in the driver's seat and had the driver door open, and Gabby was hitting Brian near the arm or maybe in the face with an open hand and was telling Brian to let her in. Officer Pratt made arrangements to pick up a statement from Redacted at a later time, and Redacted said he would start writing down what he remembered while it was still fresh in his memory. Redacted said he was casually observing the incident and said again that something seemed off. Redacted statement has been attached to the report. From the police department, what was the failure? All of it, all across the board. Not arresting them, letting them get back together the next day. If her parents had been involved, would she have gone and picked them up the next day? Probably not. She probably would have left with her parents, right? Like, welcome, Fatty. Welcome to being a member. Welcome to 𝗟𝗟𝗋𝗋verse. I was surprised there's no history of mental health issues for either person, possibly undiagnosed. I believe that. I believe that. I agree. Thank you, BC girl, for supporting. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, BC girl. I'm a nerd. What do you mean, number 7? What do you mean she's an adult? She's an adult, so calling her parents? Wait. Pause. You're gonna learn a little something about me. I'm full as grown. I'll still call my dad to come bail me out. Honey, you better believe that. And he absolutely would. Whether I was Gabby's age or now or 75. The failure when won the lawsuit was a failure to arrest. Well, failure to arrest, yeah, and act like medical health professionals. Oh, thank you, Tipsy. Officer Robbins is the investigator officer in the case and was assisted by Officer Pratt. It is my understanding and assumption through watching the body-worn camera videos that Officer Pratt is more experienced than Officer Robbins and was taking an active role in guiding Officer Robbins throughout the investigation. At the end of the investigation, when another call came out, Officer Pratt asked Officer Robbins if he would feel more comfortable taking the call that just came out, leaving Officer Pratt to conclude this investigation. Ultimately, it was decided by Officer Robbins would conclude the case and that Officer Pratt left the scene. Officer Robbins advised Gabby that she was not going to get charged with anything, but stated he had to separate her and Brian for the night. Officer Robbins tells Brian the same thing, stating that since Gabby did not intend to hurt him, technically speaking, it does not fit the letter of the code, so he was not charging Gabby with domestic violence assault. Officer Robbins advises them both not to have any contact with each other until the following day and allows Gabby to take custody of the van while Officer Robbins transports Brian to the Bowen Motel. During the investigation, Officer Pratt spoke to Redacted, Brian, and Gabby to gather the facts of the case. Officer Robbins spoke with Brian and Gabby and took photographs of Brian's injuries and both of their driver's license. Summary and evidence. Thank you, Pantera. Nerds. Yay. Alfred, welcome. Is this your first time here, Alfred? Welcome to Melly's channel, my channel. I don't know why I'm talking about third person. I was going to say, welcome to Mellyverse. Nerds are hot. That's funny. Anyways, welcome, Alfred. Thank you for being here. Oh, thank you, thank you. Yay! Jen, thank you for the super chat. Thank you. That means a lot. All of you supporting my channel. Jen said, Melly, love you. Called my dad last week and after your live hanging out tomorrow. I want to hear all about it. You need to update me. I need to email you and give you my number so you can tell me all about it. That's awesome. That's awesome. I hope you guys have a good time. That's important. Life is too short. Don't know if I was going as far the whole, right? Okay, let's get through. We're going to read like maybe 10 more pages and then we'll read the rest of it tomorrow. It's long, but it's really good. The section will include the initial complaint with applicable with Utah code sections and applicable with Moab Police Department policies. If there are any other policy sections outside of the domestic violence policy, those sections will be addressed. In total, this will highlight all the sections that I will attempt to investigate and, if possible, provide a conclusion on whether or not there was a violation, whether it be of law or policy. Since there was a formal complaint, these complaints will be noted first. So they're going to go through complaints, and if it's unfounded, it means investigation. We're going to do a little like take notes. Unfounded means investigation finds there was no violation. Exonerated means investigation finds a violation that did occur, but it was justified, lawful, and proper. Not sustained means the investigation finds there is insufficient evidence to sustain or exonerate. And sustained means investigation finds sufficient evidence to establish that the code or policy was violated. I'm looking for the sustained. I would like to know what codes or policy were violated. Formal complaints. Number 1, an officer described his wife's private medical diagnosis and prescribed medication with Brian Laundrie while transporting him to the police station, which was captured on body cam and subsequently released without redaction. We saw that, right? That's wild, because we all been talking about what we see that was wrong with all of the body cam. Brian was not transported to the police station. He was transported to a local motel. Moab City Police Policy, Chapter 342, addresses the information that is prohibited for release. Line item H states, quote unquote, personal information of an officer or the officer's immediate family member. All recordings made by members on any department-issued device at any time and any recording made while acting in the official capacity of this department, regardless of the ownership of the device it was made on, shall remain in the property of the department. Members shall have no expectation of privacy or ownership interest in content of these recordings. Moab City Police Policy states, Chapter 422 states, all recordings should be reviewed by the custodian of records prior to public release. Recordings that unreasonably violate a person's privacy or a sense of dignity should not be publicly released unless disclosure is required by law or by the court. This specific complaint is regarding personal information that was discussed by Officer Robbins regarding his wife. The complaint states Officer Robin disclosed his wife's medical diagnosis and prescribed medication with 𝗏𝗏. At no point during their discussion did Officer Robbins specifically disclose any of these things. Officer Robbins states his wife has anxiety and takes medication for it. Although the line can be drawn and an assumption can be made that there is a diagnosis because of taking medication, we don't know what the actual diagnosis is or what medication she is even taking, or if the medication is even prescribed. I was also unable to find anywhere in the Moab City Department policy where it states what constitutes personal information and where the line is drawn on what cannot and cannot be released as it relates to that. Officer Robbins and Officer Pratt spent approximately 75 minutes with Brian and Gabby and demonstrated throughout their contact their ability to have an authentic and respectful conversation regarding the incident. During this interaction, Officer Robbins and Officer Pratt felt comfortable enough to share details regarding their personal lives that related to Brian and Gabby's relationship and this incident. Officer Robbins is aware his body-worn camera is on and recording and also knows, or should know, he has no expectation of privacy as it relates to his law enforcement interactions with the public. Additionally, while knowing his body-worn camera is on, if Officer Robbins was comfortable sharing generic details he did with Brian, it would be difficult to say that he unreasonably violated his wife's privacy or sense of dignity unless a complaint was made by Officer Robbins' wife herself. Before I move on to number 2, let me touch base with you guys. Had no posture with Brian. I agree. Professionals should never bring their personal lives into any situation. I agree with that. I agree with that, Kim. Number 2, several officers discussed the legislator's intent to remove discretion from responding officers in suspected domestic violence calls and strategize around how they can evade the imposition of legislative intent to arrest and or cite suspects. This concern is addressed later on the report. To provide a brief response, I would likely disagree that the officers strategize a way around the statute. I would say the officers made a mistake by not reading the entire assault statute as well as misinterpreting the language in the statute. Number 3, an officer appears to carefully and deliberately coach Gabby Petito to answer questions regarding intent in manner that would allow the officer to avoid issuing her citation or arrest. Kind of agree with that. All the cop did was refer to his ex-wife. Yeah, but like talking about diagnosis and like medications, I feel like, I don't know, is that a little personal? An officer appears to, oh, I already read that part, sorry. Some of the statements made by Officer Pratt to Gabby during his questioning are below. Officer Pratt tells Gabby he has a question for her and how she answered the question determined what would happen next, and further states that she was the only one that could answer the question. Think very hard before you answer, said Officer Pratt. He says, when you slapped him those times, were you attempting to cause him physical pain or physical impairment? Gabby answers immediately, shaking her head to the side and stating no. Officer Pratt says, what were you attempting to do? What was the reason behind the slapping and stuff? What were you attempting to accomplish by slapping him? Gabby replies, I was trying to get him to stop telling me to calm down. Officer Pratt then says out loud, well, it doesn't sound to me like she attempted to injure him. I asked Officer Pratt if he recalled the manner in which he questioned Gabby regarding her intent. Officer Pratt stated he recalled telling Gabby to not answer quickly and to think about the questions before answering them. Officer Pratt said, I do recall her telling I do recall telling her to think about it because it's important and I think it's a fair thing to tell somebody. Officer Pratt said, you have to assume that Gabby knew what Officer Pratt wanted her to give him, which he never provided her. Officer Pratt said, what I didn't want to see that day was her take all of the criminal responsibility for the incident upon herself at 22 years old. I asked Officer Pratt if he deliberately coached Gabby and her responses to his questions regarding her intent. Officer Pratt said he had no idea what she was going to say. Officer Pratt acknowledged that he could see why some people might think he coached her. Officer Pratt said, I truly did not know what she was going to do next. I was afraid that she was going to say something that was going to make her go to jail. I didn't want her to go to jail, but I would have taken her to jail if she had said the other thing, and I don't consider giving someone fair warning to think about their answer because it's an important question to be coaching. Officer Pratt stated multiple times that he wanted an honest answer out of Gabby. Officer Pratt said the way he asked the questions was to stress the importance to Gabby to think about the question and provide an honest answer. Officer Pratt said, maybe I coached her into giving me an honest answer because that's what I was wanting. That's what I wanted, and honestly, that's haunted me. Her saying, I just wanted him to stop telling me to calm down. She's little. I have daughters. I can imagine them in this situation. I can totally see one of my daughters just wanting to stop telling them to calm down. I believe what she said. I believed it then. I still do, says Officer Pratt. He said he was not deliberately coaching Gabby and just wanted an honest answer. Officer Robbins was present during the above questioning. I asked Officer Robbins if he recalled this conversation, and he said vaguely. I asked if Officer Robbins recalled the manner in which the questions were asked. Officer Robbins said he didn't and only remembered Gabby being asked about the intent and her denying the intent to hurt Brian. How do you guys feel about Officer Pratt? They all asked them leading questions. I agree, Kim. It's wrong AF. I agree, being bio girl. Dude talking about his old lady and comparing and comforting was incredibly out of pocket. I think so too. It is personal, but cops are human too. Well, then it goes back to they should be trained. I don't know. But exposing blood is harming. Sounds like little Brian was gaslighted big time. The body cam always felt like it was boys against girl, in my opinion. Right, ATS? Smog Dog sounds like my ex. The cops buddied up with Brian and then tried to relate to Brian by comparing their wives' medical issues to Gabby being abused. I agree. I agree, ATS. These cops are very generous to her. I never heard a cop be so kind to me to help me not get arrested, but hindsight, it wasn't kind, right? There were witnesses whom stated he was the initial aggressor. Whether she said she did or did not doesn't make it true. Right. Okay, so even though she admitted that she was aggressor, y'all saying that, yeah, she did. I think two things can be true at once in the situation. Number 4, an officer refers to Gabby Petito as blonde hair, blue-eyed girl who is 110 pounds, dripping wet, and refers to Brian Laundrie as a strong guy who can defend, because she was sweating, who can defend himself, which is not relevant evidence when evaluating the protocol of legislator-mandated actions and domestic violence call. Further, it is unclear why the eye and hair color of one of the subjects would be material to any analysis and may suggest the officers were operating under a confirmation bias or that they were unconsciously influenced by stereotypes about who is involved in domestic violence. The complainant, Tanya Reeves, sent a follow-up email apologizing and stated she misattributed the blonde hair, blue eye remark, which is correct. She states is in her follow-up email that the information was said by Brian, not the officers. The first part of this complaint is addressed in further detail in this report. Number 5, an officer makes disparaging references to the legislation relevant to this call in the presence of the subjects, claiming that he cannot treat the subjects differently because of the gender of the primary aggressor, and then proceeds to do that precisely. While reviewing the body-worn camera footage, this topic is discussed on multiple occasions. Officer Pratt discusses with Brian and Gabby and the other officers the lack of discretion in these cases. When describing this to Brian and Gabby, he explained that it doesn't matter the gender and or the size of whoever the primary aggressor is, or if the injuries are minimal. Officer Pratt states that they have to treat all the domestic violence assault cases the same. Officer Pratt tells Gabby that the law doesn't allow them to treat people differently, stating, even if it makes no sense that you probably could not physically destroy this man the way he could if he attacked you, we can't treat you differently. He further tells Gabby that the law was made in Utah because, quote unquote, they don't trust the police to make good decisions because too many cops have made bad decisions. I must have missed that in the body cam. He goes on to say that this is why they took discretion away on domestic violence cases, stating that whoever the primary aggressor is has to be charged. Officer Pratt tells Gabby, we literally have no choice. He does not want to press charges. We don't have any choice in this. He further states that if he had discretion, he would separate them for the night and tell them to stop hitting each other. But I lawfully don't have discretion here. While an argument could be made that his statements were disparaging, it was done in the context of trying to explain what law enforcement could and could not do. As far as the officers doing precisely what they said they couldn't do, that is explained in further detail in this report. They are a trip. The officer references a 911 call that identified Brian Laundrie pushing Gabby Petito away from him, and then says there's a second witness who they haven't spoken with yet, but may corroborate the claim. Should the officer have obtained the statement from the second witness or listened to the 911 call before determining who was a primary aggressor? Haven't we been questioning this? Like, we're literally like, okay, wait, she admits to it. I see you guys. I see you. Yeah, she admits to putting his hands on him, but I probably would too if I was defending myself or being abused. I probably would too, because if we were to take it to court and I lied, that probably wouldn't be very good, right? I think hindsight and right, 2020. I agree with you, BC girl. I agree. So that's a good question in this investigative report. Should the officer have obtained a statement from the second witness before determining who was the primary aggressor? There was only one 911 call in reference to this incident. That caller reported Brian slapping Gabby. The other witness was found on the scene at the Moonflower and provided a verbal and written statement later on. The issue is addressed more in detail later in this report, but in short, the answer would be yes. The officer should have obtained a statement from the 911 caller, redacted, before making a final determination if it was possible for them to do so. Investigative number 7. The officers twisted themselves into knots trying to find a way to avoid affecting an arrest citation because of their sympathy for this couple and their assessment that no one was actually in danger, which is precisely what the legislator attempted to curtail, substituting the judgment of the officers for the mandates of the legislation. The investigative police person in this document says, I believe it is clear from the body-worn camera footage that stating the officers twisted themselves into knots trying to find a way to avoid affecting an arrest is a gross mischaracterization of what happened. Law enforcement is being second-guessed now more than ever, which has led officers to taking more caution and time before making a decision to try and avoid the inevitable second-guessing. These officers were authentic in their interactions and treated Brian and Gabby with kindness and respect. I would say the officers displayed sympathy and empathy for the couple, which undoubtedly led to Officer Pratt second-guessing himself, despite the fact that he said multiple times what needed to happen. Officer Pratt resorted to calling a supervisor and then rereading the assault statute. From there, the statute was not fully read, and what was read was misinterpreted, which led to not arresting anyone in this incident. So let's reread that. Officer Pratt resorted to calling a supervisor and then rereading the assault statute. From there, the statute was not fully read, and what was read led to not arresting anyone. So he didn't know, he didn't understand it, he misinterpreted it, so that's why they didn't arrest anyone, and it could have possibly saved Gabby's life. I'm not going to go down without a fight. Right, Jahira? Melly, it's okay for a girl to slap a guy, but men should not hit women or take her stuff. All she wanted was to do her YouTube videos and have fun doing it. I agree. Solid Man Studio Productions. I hate saying it, but at the same time, I don't hate to say it. If she admitted to hitting him also, they could have both been taken in. Maybe Gabby would have called their parents. Things could have changed. Yeah, I said that earlier. I'm like, if her parents would have got her, then she maybe wouldn't have driven to pick him up, and then he wouldn't have killed her, right? Yes, that's a good point, Jem. I have anxiety, but it doesn't make me assault people. Going to jail might have led to Gabby's parents being notified. I agree. ATS. The main decision became they were white, young, upper middle class, and they thought they were just innocent. Right? Jem's like, but wait, I didn't get no breaks. Facts. Thank you, Mary D. I appreciate you. It could have changed the course, but that wasn't her fate. So sad. I know, ATS. It's so sad. Okay, let's see. We have a few more pages. The officer concluded in the report that he did not believe the incident rose to the level of domestic assault so much as the mental health crisis. Have officers received sufficient training in mental illness and domestic violence to accurately make that determination? These are like all the questions we had at the beginning, right? Beginning of my other live or this live and the case in general, and probably as we watch the documentary. I was unable to answer this question in full, but asked both officers for an explanation into why they categorized this incident in such a way. Their responses are documented later on in this report. Number 9, one additional concern I wish to add to my complaint is the officer's lack of investigatory follow-up after Gabby told him that Brian had grabbed her face with his fingers, digging into the point of causing a cut on the inside of her cheek. It was hard to discern her exact words, although I did hear the word cut, but she seemed to indicate that her cheek was swelling up or tender, and she cupped it with her hand as she described the injury. The very question the officer asked in response to this was if Brian had been drinking. His very next question returns to the swerve and curb strike incident. In the footage available to me, he never returns to Gabby's allegation of a crime to ask more questions, investigate, or follow up in any manner. The officer seems distracted by the center line swerve and curb strike and the admission that Gabby had punched Brian in the shoulder when the lights were activated. They spend the majority of the investigation pursuing this allegation, while the reason for the initial detention fell by the wayside. Even when Gabby reports a battery that caused injury, her statement is completely ignored because the officers seem to be operating under a confirmation bias that influenced how they interpret the evidence and the theory of the case. Brian was thoroughly examined for evidence, including an examination underneath his clothing for the injuries of which he may be aware. Photographic evidence was obtained, and he was offered EMS services for his injuries. I'm pissed off. Did Gabby get that too? Did they offer her services we saw the pictures in her? We saw the pictures in the live, right? The other live that I did, where she has like a black eye. None of this appears to have been provided by Gabby Petito even after she reported a battery resulting in injury. These concerns are addressed in multiple sections throughout this report. Oh, I appreciate you, homie. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by and saying hi. I appreciate you. I hope you have fun. Okay, let's move on. Number 1, the primary duty of law enforcement officers responding to a domestic violence call is to protect the victim and enforce the law. That was sustained by this report. In addition to the arrest powers described, when a peace officer responds to a domestic violence call and has probable cause to believe that an act of domestic violence has been committed, the peace officer shall arrest without a warrant or shall issue a citation to any person that the peace officer has probable cause to believe has committed an act of domestic violence. That was sustained. I don't think he said it was his birthday, right? Oh, it is your birthday, homie? It's tomorrow, if I'm remembering correctly. He's probably gone, but I believe it's tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry. The incident from the beginning was classified as an assault. Oh, thank you, homie. Thank you for donating. I appreciate you. And I'm right? You're celebrating your birthday out tonight? Shout out to you. Happy birthday to you. It's tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. I would say I have a pretty good memory, but yeah, shout out to you if it's your birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday. And thank you for supporting me. I appreciate you. Yeah. I was right. The incident starts with both witnesses who included the witness that called 911 and reported Brian slapping Gabby to a second witness that stated Gabby was hitting Brian and Brian pushed or shoved Gabby. It continued on with the roadside investigation and statements made both by Brian and Gabby. I have already documented that many statements they made to law enforcement. In short, Brian and Gabby each acknowledged a verbal argument that escalated into a physical confrontation. Brian and Gabby each acknowledged getting physical with each other. It was also concluded that Brian and Gabby were cohabitants due to their statements that they were engaged and living together. There were 4 statements made, with 3 of the statements being fairly consistent stories. Gabby, Brian, and one of the 2 witnesses, redacted. A combination of using all of these individual statements along with the observations and physical evidence would point towards Gabby being the predominant aggressor, at least as it relates to the specific incident. As it relates to the 4th witness, redacted, contact was not made with him outside the 911 call, so there's no written statement and nor formal interview conducted. In his statement to dispatch, he stated he saw the gentleman slapping the girl. Redacted stated he was driving when he first observed Brian and Gabby. Redacted stated he pulled over and continued observation of the couple. Redacted then said the male and the female ran up and down the sidewalk where he proceeded to hit her. You're not a distraction. You're fine, Josh. No, you're not. You're a friend of the channel and your birthday is important. So happy birthday to you. Not a distraction at all. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you to all of you who have supported tonight. Y'all are real ones. I appreciate it. Homie's like 22. He's like out for his 21st birthday tonight. When speaking with Gabby, Officer Pratt shared redacted statements to Gabby as it related to Brian hitting Gabby. Gabby replied, "To be honest, I definitely hit him first." When pressed for details after that was just me. That's funny. Patty says just a pup. That's funny. When pressed for details after Gabby and Brian described her to prevent her from hitting him, Officer Pratt states, "Did he hit you though?" Officer Pratt stresses the importance of telling the truth. Gabby replied, "I guess, but I hit him first." Officer Pratt asked where Brian hit her. Gabby stated, "Brian grabbed my face, I guess," while also demonstrating the action. Gabby states that he didn't punch me in the face. Gabby said Brian grabbed her face and said she could feel a cut on her left cheek. Gabby stated when she touches her cheek, it burns. The end result of the investigative incident concluded when separating Brian and Gabby, not making an arrest either by citation or custody. Based on the information provided in the specific incident, Brian would be the victim with Gabby being the suspect. I can't do it. I'm shook. I'm shook. As it relates to the primary duty of law enforcement while responding to a domestic violence call, the officer protected the victim by separating Brian from Gabby. However, I do not find that they enforced the law. They responded to a confirmed domestic violence incident and they had evidence showing an assault had taken place. The statements of all of those involved, along with the evidence presented, provided probable cause for an arrest. Officer Pratt talks in detail multiple times about the lack of discretion law enforcement officers have when it comes to domestic violence incidents. It is clear to me that an arrest, either by citation or custody, was decided would be the most appropriate action to take throughout the entire investigation. Officer Pratt describes to Gabby the actions they must take, and Gabby becomes extremely emotional, talking about how she doesn't want to be separated from Brian. Officer Pratt states they quote unquote, lawfully don't have discretion here. Officer Pratt tells Gabby that the best thing he can do for her at this point is to speak to his supervisor to see if he is missing something. Officer Pratt explained to Gabby he didn't think there was anything he was missing, but he would still follow up with his supervisor and ask. Officer Pratt calls Assistant Chief Palmer and explains the circumstances. Officer Pratt tells Assistant Chief Palmer at the end of the conversation that he is going to reread the statute to see if it fits or if there is a way that it doesn't fit. When speaking to Officer Robbins regarding this conversation with Assistant Chief Palmer, Officer Pratt indicates the only way to take action on this case is if the circumstances don't fit what the statute states. Officer Pratt stated if it fits, then they must follow the law and they must take action. In subsequent interview with Officer Pratt and Assistant Chief Palmer, they both recalled this conversation and their answers to what the content of the conversation was consistent. Assistant Chief Palmer stated that he referred Officer Pratt to city policy and state law and follows what fits the situation. Assistant Chief Palmer stated that he was not on scene and didn't have all the facts that Officer Pratt had, so that was the gist of his advice. Officer Pratt confirmed this by stating he was told what fits, quote unquote. If it's a domestic, do a domestic. If it's not, then don't. Officer Pratt starts looking at the specific wording used in the Utah Criminal Code for assault. This is where I believe Officer Pratt made a mistake by assigning the wrong culpability to the code, as well as not reading the entirety of the statute. Mistakes, mistakes, mistakes. He must have been close to getting off work that day, right, Ajem? Yeah. According to Utah Criminal Code for assault, it states, number 1, assault is an attempt with unlawful force or violence to do bodily injury to another, or B, an act committed with unlawful force or violence that causes bodily injury to another or creates a substantial risk of bodily injury to another. Officer Pratt tells Officer Robbins how important it is to read the actual verbiage of what is written in the various codes. Officer Pratt talks about the verbiage of the assault being, quote unquote, the intent to do bodily injury. Officer Pratt only reads a subsection of the statute. Officer Pratt then looks up the definition of bodily injury in the Utah Criminal Code and reads it to Officer Robbins. The definition in the Utah Criminal Code for bodily injury states, bodily injury means physical pain, illness, or impairment of physical condition. As it is written, intent is not written in the assault code, and as I previously said, I believe Officer Pratt made a mistake in the way he interpreted the code, as well as not reading the complete code. As it relates to various crimes written throughout Utah State Criminal Code, there are many crimes that specifies the culpability intent needed to fit a specific statute or classification. These are explained in Utah Criminal Code. There are 4 culpability definitions explained, which are intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, and with criminal negligence. In the Utah Criminal Code, every offense not involving strict liability shall require a culpable mental state. And when the definition of the offense does not specify a culpable mental state, and the offense does not involve strict liability, intent, and knowledge, or recklessness shall suffice to establish criminal responsibility. An offense shall involve strict liability if the statute defining the offense clearly indicates a legislative purpose to impose criminal responsibility for commission of the conduct prohibited by the statute, without requiring the proof of any culpable mental state. Since the assault statute doesn't provide a culpability requirement, it also does not label it a strict liability offense. Intent, knowledge, or recklessness is what would be required to establish criminal responsibility for assault. Officer Robbins asked Officer Pratt if the definition included, quote unquote, attempt and intent, or attempt or intent. Officer Pratt replies stating, when you're attempting to do something, you have to tend to do by it. By Officer Pratt believing assault had the highest level of culpability, he believed that Gabby had to have acted with the intent to cause the injuries that Brian sustained, and therefore didn't believe this incident fit the statute after asking Gabby what her intent was. However, as previously explained, assault does not have an assigned culpability written in the statute, So the culpability of assault would have to meet the requirement of intent, knowledge, or recklessness. At one point during this incident, Officer Pratt tells Officer Robbins that he doesn't care if they use the actual letter of the law. That's a quote by him. In deciding not to charge Gabby, he also tells Officer Robbins that it makes sense to go full-on domestic assault. When people talk about the letter of the law, they are talking about the actual words written, the literal interpretation of the words. This line of thinking lines up with what Officer Pratt explains later on, that one officer may see things differently than another officer, and Officer Pratt believed this incident didn't meet the elements of assault code as it was written. Applicable interview responses, Officer Pratt. In subsequent interview with Officer Pratt, I asked how he reached the conclusion that this incident was more accurately categorized as a mental emotional health break than a domestic assault. Officer Pratt said he applied his numerous years in law enforcement as well as his overall life experience when stating he believed to see signs of mental health issues from both Brian and Gabby. So then why didn't he take any one of them in? Mental health issues. These are the words he said. This is an investigation on the Moab Police Department. I'm shook. Officer Pratt said, I saw the dynamics of their relationship. If there were all these red flags that he was going to murder Gabby, I didn't see those. I saw the same red flags I see every time I get called to a relationship issue. They don't call us there because they're doing great and want the police to come over and see how great they're doing. They call us because something is devolved. Officer Pratt described seeing this as another unhealthy relationship. Officer Pratt said, if it was not an assault, which I decided it wasn't, then what else could it? Then what else could it? Then what could I call it if it wasn't an assault? If it was an assault, she would have to be arrested. But there's elements to the offense of assault, and you have to meet those. I asked Officer Pratt if he believed domestic violence assault took place during the incident. Officer Pratt gave the example that one officer will handle a call differently than another officer based on their training, experience, and their interpretation of the totality of the circumstances presented to them. Officer Pratt said, it's our duty to document and to support with reasoning, logic, and hopefully the law backing us, because we all read the same code. Why we choose to do the arrest or not do the arrest. And the better you are at that, usually the better cop you are. But everyone makes mistakes or reads something wrong. Bro, those are grounds for being detained, right? Right, Egypt. I know. Pat, aka dipshit. You know, we saw the body camera, right? And I bet they didn't know that this investigative report was going to be done there after the fact. So, ugh. It goes back to me the other night in the video when I was like popping off. Don't come for me. I was upset in that video, especially if it was for the welfare of potential victims in the instance. $3 million mistake, right? Officer Pratt said the injuries on her face and her saying she hit him are evidence of assault, not to mention the name. Well, looks like someone isn't very ethical in my book. Officer Pratt stated that he determined that one of the elements for assault was missing. Officer Pratt explained this as being the attempt to use unlawful force or violence to cause bodily injury to Brian. Officer Pratt described this stating, implicit with attempt is intent. You can't attempt something with no intent to do it. So obviously intent is part of assault. Officer Pratt stated this was the reason why he asked Gabby what her intent was when she was hitting Brian. Officer Pratt stated most guys our size would say that you, quote unquote, can't slap and do that, but followed up with, quote unquote, well, you've never been a 110-pound female. Officer Pratt stated Gabby's intent was important, and when she was asked why she was slapping Brian, Gabby said, I just wanted him to stop telling me to calm down. Officer Pratt said that sounded very reasonable to him and that he didn't think she had the intent behind it to do bodily injury to him. I think she wanted to modify his behavior and she doesn't have the tools in her toolbox to do it. So now he's saying that, what a sexist officer. Now he's saying that the 110-pound female can't cause much, damage, basically. She doesn't have the tools in her toolbox. Yuck. I have to watch that. I'm going to try to watch it tonight. Let me get a drink before I like pass out dehydration. Officer Pratt, it was an oversight. Get some glasses, bro. Yeah, I have nothing nice to say about Officer Pratt. Officer Pratt added, quote unquote, "That's why we spend so much time in court, way more time than I have on the side of the road. They have entire days of trials spent nothing more than just establishing intent on a crime. I don't have special expert witnesses on the side of the road. I don't have 5 days of my trial with these people to figure out who to charge. I got like less than an hour apparently, so they trust me after 16 years to figure it out. And I took my 16 years of experience and said I believed Gabby based on the totality of circumstances and based on what she appears physically capable of and based on what I saw him doing and act the way he was acting, that I don't think she assaulted him." Wait, so he went from saying she was responsible to she wasn't? Officer Pratt also added that what he believed could have happened if Gabby had been arrested and Brian bailed her out and signed the protective order waiver. Officer Pratt pointed out that Brian had said they didn't have a lot of money. Officer Pratt said, quote unquote, "So if he's going to go bail her out, is he not going to have more control over her now? Now we're out of money. Blame it on her because I had to bail you out. You know, all it's going to do is put the power and dynamics more on him in his favor, where he's like, now we have to go back to court or video court. Now we don't have the money because I had to bail you out. Oh, we're in another fight. Go ahead and call the cops. How did that go for you the first time?" What the? I asked Officer Pratt where he looked up the code for assault, which he stated it was from the Utah legislator website. I asked Officer Pratt if at the time of the incident, if he believed he read the entire definition of assault to Officer Robbins. Officer Pratt stated he believes he did and also stated that he had looked up the definition of bodily injury to further expand on what the code was stating. Do they not have to study these codes to like get into this job? Like, I'm a little shook. Officer Pratt stated he first had to see if the crime of assault was met, and if so, then they would be able to attach the domestic violence attribute to that. However, if there was no crime of assault, then it couldn't be a domestic violence issue. I asked Officer Pratt if he still believes to this day, November 1st, 2021, that attempt and intent were synonymous or implicit with each other. Officer Pratt stated, "To this day, I still believe that." Officer Pratt stated if he is wrong, he would adjust his future interactions in acknowledgement of that information. I explained to Officer Pratt the 4 culpabilities and their levels. I also read Officer Pratt the assault code in full. Officer Pratt said that does change things. Officer Pratt stated he is sure that he has read the part of the assault code before and it has to be addressed. Officer Pratt said he probably got sidetracked with the bodily injury portion of the assault code and went on and read the definition for bodily harm, neglecting to scroll down and read the rest of the assault statute. Officer Pratt said, quote unquote, "And if I did, that's a mistake and it may have changed our decisions. But I can't say that even here now until I read it and really think about it for a few minutes, because I do take the act of putting people in handcuffs and taking their freedom and giving them charges very seriously. And I usually spend a little bit of time reading up on it first, then trying to figure out if that's going to fly. So yes, that second part you said, I would have to admit that could have changed what we decided to do, but I would still have to look it over and think about it." So basically, it would have changed them being arrested and separated, etc. And maybe Gabby could still be alive, question mark. Officer Pratt, you did not read the code. You read into the code. Right. Officer Pratt, how many women did you hit in your 16 years of experience with your partner? I agree with that. Divorced, right. I'm wondering if the satire made him more sympathetic. Yeah. Right, Kim. It's not your decision to decide. You can't have it both ways. Exactly, Kim. We're going to look into Officer Pratt. Hey, Chasing. Good to see you. The codes are written to take the way they are, not to make them into what you want them to be. Okay. We're going to read one more page and then we'll end it and continue tomorrow on part 2. Well, I'll read this one more section. Applicable interview responses. Officer Robbins. So this is the other officer that was there. In a subsequent interview with Officer Robbins, I asked how he reached the conclusion that an assault did not take place. Officer Robbins stated he observed the code Officer Pratt showed him, and in the code it said, with the intent to cause harm. Officer Robbins stated, I went with that one because she said she didn't have the intent to harm him. I asked Officer Robbins if he just went with what was told by Officer Pratt, or if he just actually observed the code himself. Officer Robbins stated, Officer Pratt showed me the code. So Officer Pratt, who wasn't even reading it right, goes and tries to tell Officer Robbins that same information, which is not right. He misinterpreted it, right, according to this report. I read the assault code in full and asked Officer Robbins if anywhere in the code it said the word intent. Officer Robbins said it might have been somewhere else. I'm not sure. Sounds like they didn't know what the hell they were doing. I asked Officer Robbins if he actually felt at the time of the incident that the definition of assault included the intent to cause bodily injury. Officer Robbins said yes. I asked Officer Robbins if his decision during this incident was a decision made to benefit himself or anyone else. Officer Robbins stated he did what he thought was best for the situation. Someone tell Officer Pratt and Officer Robbins we would like to ask questions at 𝗏𝐿𝑦verse. I asked Officer Robbins if he was aware of the duties of the arrest and Utah State Code. Officer Robbins stated he was aware. I read him the duties of the arrest and asked Officer Robbins if he believed he followed Utah State Code. Officer Robbins stated, at the time I did. I asked Officer Robbins how he reached the conclusion written in his report that states, I do not believe the situation escalated to the level of a domestic assault as much as that of mental health crisis. And I asked how he quantified the two. Officer Robbins stated he was trying to fix the problem and figure out what was the underlying problem was. Officer Robbins didn't feel it was an ongoing issue of assault, but an ongoing mental health issue, which caused a domestic. I asked if this incident was more of a mental health crisis, why he didn't get Brian and Gabby in touch with mental health professionals. This investigator investigating Moab police, that they asked him why didn't he get Brian and Gabby in touch with mental health professionals. Again, could that have saved her life? His life essentially too, right? He probably didn't want to spend the rest of his life in prison, but also I do believe they both had mental health issues. Officer Robbins stated that it was a busy day and calls were stacking up left and right and mistakes were made. Is that like a legitimate response for a cop? Because I feel like that should not be a valid response. Officer Robbins stated, oh, I'm sorry, I was reading. It completely slipped my mind. I didn't even think about it, said Officer Robbins. He stated the stress of the situation and everything else going on at that time contributed to not thinking about this. Oh, well, Officer Robbins, it looks to us back in this report, you did not have the mental capability nor the educational background to even be in this position, right? Calls are stacking up left and you're overworked. Apparently is what we're getting here. The Moab Police Department is overworking you. It completely slipped my mind. I didn't even think about it. Okay, let's move on. If the peace officer has probable cause to believe there will be continued violence against the alleged victim, or if there is evidence that the perpetrator has either recently caused serious bodily injury or used a dangerous weapon in the domestic violence offense, the officer shall arrest and take the alleged perpetrator into custody and may not utilize the option of issuing a citation under this section. That was unfounded. Based on all the information provided, I do not find this section applies in this case. There was no information provided that would cause any of the officers to believe there would be continued violence. Hold on, because I'm questioning this investigator too. There was no information provided that was caused any of the officers to believe there would be continued violence. they were putting their hands on each other. What do you mean? Like, there was also no information provided that there was serious bodily injury or that a dangerous weapon was used in the domestic violence offense. Thank you, Mary D, for the super sticker. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you for supporting and hanging around. If a peace officer does not immediately exercise arrest powers or initiate criminal proceedings by citation or otherwise, the officer shall notify the victim of the right to initiate a criminal proceeding of the importance of preserving evidence in accordance with the requirements. That was sustained. Due to Officer Robbins not exercising arrest powers by custodial or citation arrest, this section would apply to this case. Brian was adamant that he did not want to pursue charges against Gabby in this case and made it clear through his statements that he wouldn't want to initiate criminal proceedings in the future. Brian said, "I'm not going to pursue anything," further stating, "I want a checklist of things to get rid of." Was that like a subconscious statement he made there, like things to get rid of, and then Gabby dies? He murders her. I'm shook. I'm shook. Why hasn't anyone been reading this report? Does anybody read this report? I think this is important. You can see your PTSD anxiety overload. There was violence. So what makes you think there's no continued? That's right, Gem. There are reports of each having marks on them and each of them getting hit. And then they're sitting there emotional and aggressive and violent and emotional. And they're like talking about how they don't want to be split up and they're going to meet up the next day. They're like, if he wants to bail you out or whatever, like, you know what I mean? That whole yeah, it is confusing. They admitted it and eyewitnesses saw it too. There are numerous things the officers did do as it applied to this section. The officer took action that provided safety for Brian by separating him from Gabby. The officers provided emergency shelter to Brian, and they asked if he needed medical treatment. In response, Brian said, "No, I'm okay," and he referred to his injuries as baby injuries. Oh yeah, you want me to reread the number 2 where it was sustained? So it says, I'll reread it. If a peace officer does not immediately exercise arrest powers or initiate criminal proceedings by citation or otherwise, the officer shall notify the victim of the right to initiate a criminal proceeding and the importance of preserving evidence. So basically they're saying that, you know, they had to notify, which they did, I think they notified them both, like, you're either going to jail or you're not, right? Or we're gonna have to separate you, or you can press charges. And Brian's like, no, I don't want to press charges. And then says he just wants things to get rid of. But I'll reread that part too. Due to Officer Robbins not exercising arrest power by custodial or citation arrest, this section would apply to the case. Brian was adamant he did not want to pursue charges against Gabby in this case and made it clear through his statements that he wouldn't want to initiate criminal proceedings in the future. Brian said, "I'm not going to pursue anything," further stating, "I want a checklist of things to do to get rid of." There are numerous things the officer did do as it applied to this section. The officer took action that provided safety for Brian by separating him from Gabby. The officers provided emergency shelter to Brian, and they asked if he needed medical treatment. In response, Brian said, "No, I'm okay," and referred to his injuries as baby injuries. If they're baby injuries, so is he still a victim? I mean, I don't think he's a victim, but like in this part of the conversation and situation, him telling the cops, "Oh, those are just baby injuries." So then she's not the aggressor, and are you okay? Like, baby injuries, what does that mean? What I have found that the officer did not do was meet the requirements in accordance with UCA 77. This requires Brian be provided with the immediate and adequate notice of the rights of victims and of the remedies and services available to victims of domestic violence. This should be a written notice that provides information on how to obtain a protective order, list of shelters, services, and resources along with phone numbers to assist the victim in assessing any needed assistance. So they really believed that he was the victim. Right. What were hers? They weren't even baby injuries. They weren't that important, I guess. Her big black eye. This is a report. Do you think so? I feel like it kind of goes both ways. Like it covers their ass, but I feel like it also kind of disses them, right? Like basically stating that they did make mistakes and we know that they got money from it. But I think at the end of the day, none of that makes it okay in my book. If a law enforcement officer receives complaints of domestic violence from 2 or more opposing persons, the officer shall evaluate each complaint separately to identify the predominant physical aggressor. If the officer determines that one person was a predominant physical aggressor, the officer need not arrest the other person alleged to have committed domestic violence. In determining who the predominant aggressor was, the officer shall consider 1. Any prior complaints of domestic violence. 2. The relative severity of injuries inflicted on each person. 3. The likelihood of future injury to each of these parties. And 4. Whether one of these parties acted in self-defense. That statement was unfounded. There are some important, I mean, I kind of get it. Like she did admit to hitting him. But I think it takes 2 to tango, right? She was probably defending herself. I don't know. There are some important things to know as it pertains to this section because throughout this contact, as well as highlighted in the initial complaint, the words primary aggressor is what is commonly used. Primary aggressor and predominant aggressor are not the exact same thing. A predominant, okay, this is good. I'm learning a lot. Like I did not know laws on like domestic violence like this. Even though it's not in the state that I live in, it's very much helpful as we cover true crime, right? And want to give our opinions in true crime cases. It's nice to know that we're somewhat educated in some of this. Yeah. So a primary aggressor and a predominant aggressor are not the same thing. A predominant aggressor is not automatically the person who starts a domestic violence incident, and they are also not automatically the person who has the least severe or least amount of injury. In this instance, there were 2 opposing persons, none of which reported the incident, but was reported by a third party. There were no prior complaints of domestic violence reported by either party, nor was this question asked by either officers. The overall severity of the injuries sustained by both parties were minor, as evidenced by the statements made by both parties and the observations of the officers. There was no information provided at the time that would lead the officers to believe there would be continued violence that would lead to the likelihood of future injury. Additionally, the statements made specifically by the 2 involved individuals and one of the 2 witnesses would lead the officers to believe that Brian was acting in self-defense. I don't think they asked enough questions to cover those. I agree, Gem. The 911 call was report an unbiased one at that. Public relations wrote it for the cop. I feel like the investigator was trying to say something without saying anything. Yes, I feel like they do that in this report. An issue with the section is that there was no further investigation into the complaint made by Gabby and Brian grabbing her face and causing the scratch on her cheek outside what Gabby disclosed. Brian was not asked about it, and the witness who called 911 was not interviewed. With that said, Gabby made multiple statements to officers that would lead them to believe she was the predominant physical aggressor. So basically, because there was no complaint and they didn't question the comment that Gabby said about Brian grabbing her face, they assumed that she was the primary or the predominant physical aggressor. So they failed to ask those questions and it clouded their judgment, right, when they made the decision. There are a couple things that could point to Brian being the predominant physical aggressor, that is, if Gabby hadn't made the statements she did. The lack of emotion and fear from Brian may point towards someone who is the predominant aggressor, but as previously mentioned, Gabby's statements to law enforcement make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to substantiate a charge against Brian as it relates to the incident. A law enforcement officer may not threaten, suggest, or otherwise indicate the possible arrest of all parties in order to discourage any party's request for the intervention by law enforcement. That was unfounded. This is not applicable as no officers made such statements, and Officer Pratt accurately explained to Officer Robbins on the scene that this is something they could not do and explained this is something unlawful. 5. A law enforcement officer who does not make an arrest after investigating a complaint of domestic violence or who arrests 2 or more parties shall submit a detailed written report specifying the grounds for not arresting or arresting both parties. That statement was sustained. A law enforcement officer who does not make an arrest shall notify the victim of the right to initiate a criminal proceeding and the importance of preserving evidence. That was unfounded. So they violated that. A law enforcement officer who does not make an arrest shall notify the victim of the right to initiate a criminal proceeding. These sections apply as no arrest was made. However, when speaking with Brian, he made it clear he did not want to be a victim in this case and didn't want any charges brought on to Gabby. It was explained to Brian the lack of discretion officers have in domestic violence cases, and Brian maintained his position that he and Gabby, quote unquote, are a team, and he didn't want her to be charged. Officer Pratt explained to Brian his options when it came to Brian speaking with a county attorney and Brian's potential future involvement in this case. Brian's injuries were photographed at the same time, and there could be no further evidential items that Brian would need to preserve. Officer Robbins did take pictures of Brian's injuries for the purpose of preserving and documenting information. There was a report submitted that specified the grounds for not making an arrest. As far as it is being detailed, I have documented my many concerns with the content of the case and reports under the section further in the report titled Investigations. The lack of details in the report is the justification for sustaining this section above. 6. A law enforcement officer responding to a complaint of domestic violence shall prepare an incident report that includes the officer's disposition of the case. That was unfounded. This is addressed in the above response. The incident report shall be made available to the victim upon request at no cost. Unfounded. The law enforcement agency shall forward a copy of the incident report to the appropriate prosecuting attorney within 5 days after the complaint of domestic violence occurred. That was sustained. According to Assistant Chief Palmer, he did not believe the report was ever forwarded to the appropriate prosecuting attorney as there were no charges or arrests. Due to this incident being a domestic violence incident, the report should have been filed. The investigating officer made a mistake in miscategorizing, which should have been addressed by administrative personnel as the report was forwarded on from another officer. I'm shook, all of these mistakes. Yeah, I agree, Pantera. And she gets a call, so probably would have called him if arrested. But did you see? Yeah. They would have taken, okay, let's get through one more. I keep saying that, but I want to finish these statements. Each law enforcement agency shall, as soon as practicable, make a written record and maintain records of all incidents of domestic violence reported to it and shall be identified by a law enforcement agency code for domestic violence. That was sustained. There was a case report completed regarding this case, and it has been identified as Moab police case, etc. In this case report, the incident is categorized as disorderly conduct incident and details the disposition of the case. The classification for this report should have been a domestic violence related category. So we'll continue with this report tomorrow. Like I said, it's a lot of pages. So we still have like 50 pages to go. And it's still very interesting too. It goes over the violence policies you can see on the screen, and there's more evidence. Wow, a different officer, another mistake. The both of them who were there. Officer Pratt and Officer Robbins. It's so sad. My heart goes out to the Petito family. And Gabby makes me so sad. She just wanted to make vlogs on YouTube. Thank you for reading all of it. Yeah. I know. We would have probably got through it, but because I read the autopsy. So if you missed the beginning of the live, we covered Brian's main points of the autopsy. the medical examiner report. And then we watched the body cam footage from the female officer. So definitely make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, go back and replay, become a member, because we usually do 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 after dark later at night. 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿's coming for you, officers. Yeah, I wasn't very nice the other night. I thought that's why YouTube took my video down, but apparently it was because of Netflix. But I don't know. I think they're playing me. Oh, thank you, Jem. Thank you, Jem, Pantera, everyone who gifted, Mary, Homie Hangout, happy birthday. Thank you guys for being here. Sorry. No, it's okay to play the other side. I don't knock it. People are free to come here and say and give their opinions, right? I draw the line though. But yay, Kim, I hope you can come back tomorrow. We can finish this document tomorrow. I want to finish this, and then I had another true crime live plan tonight, but I need to eat, and then maybe we're going to do a 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 after dark. So tomorrow I plan to do this first, finish this document, and then I have another case that we're talking about that is new to my channel. So I hope you guys can make it tomorrow. I'll be here. Great, great, great. Thank you, BC girl. Thank you. YouTube is behaving like the officers. They're coming for me because I was up here talking shit about the officers and like cussing up a storm and like, oops. Thank you, Cat Randall. Meow. Anyways, make sure you hit that like button. I will see you guys tomorrow. Wait, well, if you tune into 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 after dark, then I will see you later tonight. If not, thank you for being here. I appreciate all replay viewers. I appreciate you just as much. I get a lot of comments on the replays, so I really appreciate that and supporting my channel. 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, how many women went through this with their men? A lot. I feel a lot. Domestic violence is more common than we all think and know, right? I like it. I like to hear what other people think. A debate is a sign of intelligence. I agree. Thank you, beautiful Augie and Being Bio Girl. I'm glad you're back. 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿 after dark is always special. Yeah. You're right, Kim. I need to do that too. I might be around for after dark. Well, what time is 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 after dark? Probably when I'm done eating dinner. So like maybe like an hour. I know you guys are ahead of me probably. But anyways, I appreciate you guys being here. I will catch you on the live tomorrow. I'm continuing this. I hope you guys can make it. For those of you who have been here, I think it's an easier conversation to have when you already know what's going on. But also make sure you watch the first Gabby live. It is under members only. I thought I took it off, but anyways, you should go watch it. It's back up. Thank you, King Kong. I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, you guys, I'll see you later. And if not, I will see you tomorrow. We have 2 true crime lives. I hope you guys can make it. I appreciate you so much for supporting me. I love you guys. Thank you. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.
Trying to run, the sun's can ask for feedbacks, but you getting none. It's crime o'clock with 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿, let's have some fucking fun. Some try to hide away, so all they do is work. But nobody can hide once she gets a hold of that paperwork. So don't you dare come in here acting like a jerk. Dance might make her dance, but new court docs will make her wanna twerk. Dark hair shining in the Cali sun, 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿 on the case, so no one and trying to run. You Sims can ask for feedbacks, but you getting none. It's crime o'clock with 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿, let's have some fucking fun. So if you're fiending for true crime, like it's a drug, crime o'clock with 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿 is your motherfucking plug. Going so hard on criminals, they'll call their mama for a hug. She's finding out all the stuff they try to sweep under the rug. Dark hair shining in the Cali sun, 𝗏𝐿𝐿𝐿 on the case, so no one and trying to run. You Sims can ask for feedback,